4, 1704 State Street. And then I believe she'll be leaving at 5:30 p.m. if we go that late. 5:30 or 6. Okay. Thank you.
And I would like to add that I also will be stepping down from the item number 2, 210 West Carrillo Street.
Thank you.
Okay.
I will be stepping down from item number 6, 1732 Santa Barbara Street.
Okay.
Thank
Any
you.
others?
Okay. Item number 2 on today's agenda, 210 West Carrillo, this moot, has been postponed 2 weeks at the applicant's request. And then Planning Commission is scheduled to review the revised master plan at the El Encanto Hotel on July 17th, so we're wondering if somebody can be there to represent the HLC at that hearing.
Which part?
It's just going to overlap.
No one?
Would you clarify this is an Encanto project or what?
It's a revised master plan at the El Encanto.
It would be for the area that we're looking at.
The mission?
Area M.
Well, I believe it encompasses more than just area
It would be
M.
Mission F and then the parking structure. Former tennis court.
I don't know. I asked Kathleen Kennedy if that was just the Mission Village, and she said no, it's the revised master plan. So I think it encompasses more than that.
Did we have a direct statement regarding the parking lot on the tennis court area? Do we have a position?
Statement.
Yeah. I mean,
Yes, we do.
We do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we should go to explain those two positions. We support one, we oppose the other, if I recall correctly.
Can you go, Alex?
I'll go.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
To continue item 2, 210 West Carrillo Street for 2 weeks.
I'm sorry?
You need a motion for that.
Postponement.
Yeah.
House, did you make the motion?
I did.
And Boucher.
All those in
Thank you.
favor?
I
Any opposed or abstain?
abstain.
Any other announcements?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Jacobus has an announcement.
Okay. You have before you staff's response letter to Price, Postel, and Parma. This was regarding the San Roque High School campus, and we had asked them for a letter of intent to designate, and at the last meeting you read said letter and determined that it really wasn't an intent. So what we're doing is, per your request, we're going to be moving this to the HLC Designation Subcommittee. To that end, the HLC Designation Subcommittee will be holding a meeting, and that'll be on Wednesday, July 9th. That's an HLC day. And that'll be at 10 a.m., and we'll be in the Fishbowl Conference Room, which is the conference room right through the doors over here to the left. And, of course, the public is welcome to attend that. And at that meeting, we will discuss several other nominations also, but we'll be discussing the San Roque campus and whether to bring that back to the full board for consideration as a city landmark. With that, Mr. Chair, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobus. For clarification, what is being referred to as the San Roque campus is the former St. Anthony's Seminary.
Correct. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Murray?
If you would not mind sending us a copy of Alex's report on the seminary, or is that possible?
Maybe it would be a little less expensive to circulate it. Let me find out what I can do. Either I'll circulate it through the three-member commission, or I'll see if we can get some copies made of it, or maybe just have the text. I can't remember how big it is, but we'll do something for you.
Just the text is fine.
Sure.
Just refresh our memory.
I'll get that as soon as I can so that you have plenty of time to read it through.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other announcements? Subcommittee reports?
Mr. Chair, this may not technically be a subcommittee report, but I attended the City Council Ordinance Committee meeting yesterday where they were considering updates to the zoning ordinance, and one of those discussed was a clarification regarding mixed-use projects because there's some question as to a conflict in wording in different portions about the commercial allowing residential to go to setbacks. So I don't know the exact wording, but basically it was clarified that that was the intent, you know, the way it's been interpreted since the ordinance was first enacted. I suggested they might want to consider some kind of threshold for the amount of commercial. Grant House also said, well, it was the intent to revitalize downtown and the vitality of businesses on the street and residential above, and I pointed out that one that we reviewed recently, that was not the case. The commercial was shoehorned in a rear building in order to negate needing to go for modifications. That kind of raised their eyebrows a little bit. So hopefully they're going to give that some more thought, but the next ordinance committee meeting is next Tuesday, I think, in council chambers at noon. So if anybody else would like to be there, or an official voice of the HLC a position on this issue. I said it was kind of the tail wagging the dog if it was not their original intent to have a little bit of commercial allow residential property lines.
Thank you for showing up for that. Will you be able to attend next week also?
I will be, because I have another issue I'm working on.
Would you like to be appointed as the subcommittee to represent us to this?
I would rather have another face there. That would be useful, I think.
What day?
It's Tuesday.
At 4?
No, at noon.
Right.
Yeah, when ordinance committee meets before the
I'd
regular
love
council members.
to join Commissioner Harris.
Okay.
That'd be great.
I would just like to remind everybody that the last mixed-use project that you reviewed, I believe the commercial square footage of that project was something like, was it 410 square feet or 210, something like that, between 200 and 400 square feet. So.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you both. Subcommittee reports? Alex.
Been notified by email that the project on the operational improvements, the roundabout on Montecito, there are some utility poles that are being relocated or replaced and so forth, and there is some question as to whether they were approved or not, or reviewed by the committee that reviewed those improvements. And in the emails, it seems like we all assume that the underground utility lines will go, that the utility lines will go underground, but apparently not. Apparently not. So it's not unresolved, and I don't know where it is. Perhaps we will meet tomorrow. Jaime Limon itself is trying to organize this, but I'm not sure how much leeway we have so late in the process.
I have been part of that email discussion. I don't remember looking at them. They may have been on the drawings, but there was so much information provided that, I don't remember us giving that particular thing an approval. If you like that, you will love the new sign going up on Las Positas in the freeway. You will love it.
Well, it seems like in this type of projects, the utility lines always go underground, so you kind of assume that that's going to happen. Right?
I believe I was told in another context that's a major high voltage line and can't be undergrounded. Those things happen. Exposed electric lines are historic, you know.
Mr. Chair, we have Michael Berman here as a member of staff. He can clarify the issue of the above ground electric.
Chair, I'm Michael Berman. I'm in planning, and I helped review the 101 improvements project, including the circle. There is some issue about whether the poles were clearly identified in the application that you guys reviewed in the past. But just the main reason I wanted to jump in here is that these power lines are a higher voltage. They're transmission lines, and we don't underground transmission lines. It can be technically done, but it's extremely expensive. And so they need to get moved, and they need this board's approval. So that's it. That's all I know.
Okay, great. Thank you for... Did you come down just for that? Oh, okay. Well, thank you anyway. They're huge. But they don't have solar collectors on them yet. Or signs yet. High voltage, don't climb. Yes.
Ms. Boucher, when can we expect to see sculptures?
Well, it seems to me that was going to be our first meeting in July.
I heard sculptures are going up this summer.
Yeah.
I did read that article.
Yeah, I read it too. So they will need to submit by next Wednesday to get on the July 9th agenda.
I'll be sure.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Subcommittee reports. The guidelines subcommittee met this morning, and we are looking at a near final draft of the guidelines. There's more language and many more pictures, some more to be provided, some to be enhanced by our Mr. House. The photo enhancer. It's looking good. We were told that because of all the photographs and stuff that these will now be probably sold at the exorbitant price of about $13 each. So keep that in your budget.
Mr. Chair, I'm hoping that you saw EPD plan list in those draft.
Yeah, way too long. It's like this Latin book.
We divided it up into more categories. We're trying to make it friendlier.
It's extensive. Thank you for your work on that.
Little thing of, may I ask a question of Mr. Yo-Ho? I noticed that you say, as far as citrus is concerned, only dwarf varieties. In Spain, they're used as street.
Did I say only dwarf? Well, it should include all citrus.
Have you reviewed the list after it was typed out?
No, I have not seen the latest draft after it was typed up. It's been back and forth
that section with you then.
with staff.
Mr. Chair, I'll make sure that Commissioner Adams gets a copy.
Great, thank you.
That would be good.
I think all citrus should be included. If I only said dwarf, then that was my mistake.
Well, that's fine for pots.
As long as they're not this dwarf.
Yeah, not that.
Not the one I ate from.
Segueing into possible ordinance violations, were the landscape elements of the Paseo Chapala project looked into? Whether the bonsai citrus trees are consistent with the approval? In particular? No?
No, I don't know. Is that something that that was before your time?
Up there, and there may have originally been planters
There
that were
were
planned
planters.
for that
There are
upstairs Paseo. That's the thing to focus on.
So it's Paseo Chapala?
Paseo
Paseo
Chapala.
What's the street address?
The corner of
Thank you.
615 Chapala?
700 block.
yeah. We just want an understanding of what was promised and then what occurred.
Yes.
Speaking of planting, I have a question.
Yes.
There's a parking lot in the 1100 block of Chapala behind Long's and so on and so forth, the San Marcos building. There isn't adequate planting in that, and since that's a city parking lot, I was wondering why there wasn't adequate planting.
So that's at the back of 1129?
Yes. I just noticed that the other day. I said, wait a minute.
Well, maybe it's not done.
It's old.
It's,
It probably exists.
It was planted and it's died already.
Okay.
well, it just occurred to me that since it was a city property, it would be nice if it conformed to the rules for city. Yes. Thank you.
I'll look into it.
Okay, are we done? First item is concept review for the 200 block of State Street. Ms. Grant? Speaking of parking lots, welcome.
Yes, parking lot.
Well, maybe you want to continue.
Oh. I have one.
Yeah, why don't you send it down that way, please?
And I'm really not going to reference these plans too much.
Okay. If you'd begin by introducing yourselves for the record, please.
Yes. Jessica Grant, Transportation Planning Project Planner. And with me I have Dion Tate of Downtown Parking. Today I'm here to present the Downtown Revenue Control Project and Fiber-Optics Project. Blah, blah, blah. Mouthful. So I want to start first with the revenue control equipment that we're proposing. I'm going to go ahead and lay out. As most of you know, Granada Garage began in operation in 2006, and with the launch of that new garage became some new equipment. It's called, the manufacturer is Skidata, and what we're interested in doing now is having that same equipment go in the rest of the downtown parking lots. So what I'm talking about in terms of equipment would be the ticket dispenser, which is right here, and the gate arm. And this is just a highlight of all the parking lots that would be involved. So it's parking lots 2 through 5, and then parking lot 6 is the Granada Garage that already has the equipment in it, 7 through 13, through the depot lot. And I try to take a couple pictures of what the equipment looks like in the Granada Garage. And it's really exciting technology. A lot of research went into the selection of this equipment for the Granada Garage. We're operating on 20-year-old equipment, and there's a lot more capabilities that you can do now that would satisfy current needs and future needs of downtown parking. So it is. This is the ticket dispenser, which is right here when you enter in the parking lot. And there's also one, I believe, when you exit too, if you're under the 75 minutes.
The new models,
Yeah.
they've gotten rid of the yellow in the center to make it kind of blend in a little more. It's all light gray except for the throat where the ticket comes out, so you know where to grab.
And then this is the gate arm.
With protecting post.
Yes, correct.
Could you indicate to us which of these are outside of buildings?
It would be...
All of them except for the garages, which the garages are 6, which is not included because that's already in there. 7 is sort of inside out. There's a little bit on the outside as you go outside the library garage. 8 has that new arch that was approved a few years back, so the gate arm's kind of tucked into that, but then some of it's outside. 9, it's similar. Even the garages are, some of it's kind of tucked in a little bit, but most all of it's outside. 10 is completely inside, lot 10, which is the Ortega garage. On the Ortega side, it's completely in. The Anacapa side would be exterior.
So 10 is inside?
Well, only one side of it. The Ortega side is completely inside, but
that one.
Well, I guess not completely. The gate arm on the exit would be out.
Yeah, gate arm is outside.
On the exit, gate arm on the entrance is in.
These will replace existing facilities, right?
Correct.
These are all to replace the existing
Yes.
ones.
Do you have a picture of these existing ones by any chance?
Yes, this is what they...
No, I think you need the existing.
The old ones.
Let's see. Oh, no, that's the next phase, so I'll talk about that in just a minute. I do not have a picture of the old.
So we can see how non-conforming those are.
They've been there a long time, but a lot of research went into this stuff. It's going to be real time, all on fiber optics, so you can know how many cars are in there at any given time. It's got capabilities for a lot of stuff. So.
And the finish?
It is kind of a light gray in color. Some of the materials.
Stainless I'm seeing
well, these are like a light gray in color.
Is it plastic or metal?
There is some impact-resistant ABS tops on them where they get hit the most. The bottom is a metal with a ABS. Is it? It's a type of plastic. Yeah. Thank you.
Plastic.
These were less obtrusive than some of the other manufacturers that had the same capabilities, which were big, yellow, versatile-looking things. We thought these were a little less obtrusive when we did the Granada. They kind of blend in. And as I say, now they've gotten rid of that yellow, too. It seems to have helped a little bit. But
Are there other color choices for the cabinets available?
unfortunately not.
No. I did check with the manufacturer on that. They are installed at all different places around the world. They're highlighted the Louvre, actually, in Paris, and all at various landmarks. Yes. But there's all different areas, within California. I had a couple pictures, but unfortunately, they don't. I'm not sure how good of angles I have on some of them.
It's okay.
But if it would be worth, here's one with. Let's see.
They'll go perfectly with the Caltrans power pole.
They have them in
solar collector on.
La Jolla, but they don't have the close-up picture.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. And that's not
No,
great.
we are keeping people in the kiosk. There was, we did some research on that, but that is not intended to happen now.
Mr. Chair?
Any other questions? Yeah, Steve?
Is there any above-ground conduit involved applied to buildings or otherwise?
There may be a couple of spots where we need to sweep the fiber up into the kiosks, that if we cannot bore underneath and come up through.
But in any event, you're talking about
you're
18
talking
inches
coming up the
above ground
outside
or something
and
like
using
that,
an
not
LB and
running
going
up
into
the
kiosk.
full
No,
height of a building.
definitely
And
not.
do you have any cut sheets on any of these battery cabinets, other things that go at street corners and stuff like that?
That's going to be the next discussion after I do the revenue control.
Is that part of this agenda item? Or
It is part of this agenda item.
okay.
Yeah. So once you're ready to, if you have any other questions, then I'll launch into the.
Let me ask a question.
Let's deal with
fiber.
this one
Yeah,
first.
sure.
Can these, in any way, shape, or form, can this equipment be painted a different color by the city before they're installed?
It's my understanding that we would lose the warranty on the equipment if it's painted.
And there is some issues with the heads, which are the high-impact plastic, if you will. If you painted it, then when it's integral color, so that when your mirror does scratch it, you're not going to see it as much. You paint it as soon as something scratches it, which it does, then you're going to see it right away.
Yeah, they probably look worse.
Is it going to be like this with all the APM?
No, not at all. No, that was just there's all different types of equipment under SCADA, and that is not. Yeah, I can. It's just this and just a ticket dispenser and the gate arm.
You know, it won't say that on it either. It'll be just like the Granada garage where it's.
So this is what you'd be looking at.
Mr. Chair, just to confirm my hunch, these are smaller physically than the existing ticket spitters, aren't they?
Yes,
Correct.
which was tough to find. Most of them were bigger to get the capability that these have, but these are smaller and a little nicer looking, in our opinion.
Now, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Would, for instance, could they be installed inside some of these garages, or do they have to be outside? Like, let's say like the one down by, sorry. Let's say down by, let's see, what's that one on Ortega and,
It would, well, in
Ortega and-
particular, the garages, that would be a huge project because they're on concrete and there's
they'd
loops that
relocate.
detect where the car comes in, and you can only be so far away from the gate arm that goes up.
Yeah, there's specific measurements between the ticket dispenser and the gate arm and where
And
the
then that has
kiosk
to do with
is.
the kiosk, so you then get
So
into the kiosks.
it'd be involve relocation of the entire island, so all of that.
Let me ask you about fiber optic cable. When you place that, you can fish it in. Will there be major disruption where you're putting the
No,
cable?
and if we're ready to move, I can discuss that part of the project. Are we ready to move into that?
I think I'd rather keep them separate.
Get comments first.
Get comments first.
The sort of
Don't
to
mind.
answer that question.
You
a
need
little
to
bit,
answer
in
this.
regards
Yes.
in regards to this, the equipment's going to go in the exact same spot. So the fiber optic will go to the kiosk, and then it runs on Cat 6. It's called a different type of the copper line from the kiosk out to the equipment. So no, there won't be a lot of disruption in bringing the fiber out to each piece of equipment. Fiber will go to the kiosk.
and the gate, little gatehouse is going to be
The
remain the
kiosk, I
same.
call it
Kiosk,
kiosk.
it's the same. Stay like that.
Yes.
Let me ask you a question. The other piece of equipment is part of this whole installation?
It's part. And it's
not
more.
lost.
It's more of part of the fiber optics that's going to be going in the ground. There's some already existing, so some of the garages are already wired with it that I'll discuss in a moment. And there's some that we will have to provide a path for. Fortunately, it is going to be going in existing conduit. There's a couple areas that are small that will require trenching that I'll discuss.
Then you might as well make that
Sure.
presentation.
All right.
Just to clarify, the importance of fiber optic.
If you leave these out, I
Yes.
guess.
Yes. I'll just leave them right
The
there.
importance of the fiber optic is to get the full functionality out of this new
Right.
equipment, so we can do
Right.
real-time credit card capability in the future, and you can know how many cars are into a lot at any given time.
Yeah,
If a
I
gate
think I'll
arm is
just- I think I have
broken, it'll tell us right
the same
away when
set
the gate arm is
as you
broken.
guys,
So we have
yeah.
quicker response time. It's got a lot more capability. In order to do that, it needs to be run
Right.
on something similar to fiber or cable.
Yeah, so just as Dion was saying, for the equipment to act in real time, we want to get all the newest available technology in for them to run efficiently. So what I have here is just a quick little graphic of where the proposed lines of fiber optic. As you will see, there is already from City Hall going all the way up to the Granada Garage an existing fiber optic line that was installed with the Granada Garage construction. Because of that, it would be easy for lots 7, 8, and 9 to then, they're already wired, so it would just be involving changing out the equipment on those parking lots. However, for the other parking lots, the next phase would be to run new fiber optic cable. Again, this is all within existing conduit. So minimal disturbance. There is a slight portion here on lot 5 that will have to break up a portion of the sidewalk to put the line in, but that's the only disturbance on that parking lot. For the other line, we would start at this, I believe, at this location. So lots 10 and 11. The only there's existing conduit that's going down Anacapa Street. However, it's on the other side, so we will need to trench across the street along Anacapa to lots 10 and 11. And then we will go ahead and continue the path on Ortega, go down State Street, and again, that's all in existing conduit. Once we hit lot 13, which is the depot lot, right at the corner, we would have the trench from the corner of Yananali and State to the kiosk in the existing planter, where the planter meets the curb area, so already disturbed area. So, in order to pull those fiber optics, we do need to have some additional room to pull the cabling. So this is so that's basically all not seen, but the changes that will be seen will be to these following traffic control equipment cabinets. So I think I'll just go one by one. I'll start at the corner of Coda and State Street. This one would be, it's called a 336 cabinet that's existing there now, and we would change it out with a 336 stretch, which that means that basically from this distance here to the top of this wall here is about 5 inches. And with the dimensions, there would be probably about 3 inches that would be exposed above this concrete wall. We look to you for comments of we'd be willing to increase the height slightly of this wall to cover it, or we can paint the cabinet to match the plaster. I'd look for your comments with that. The next one is the corner of Haley and State Street. This one is a 336 cabinet right now, and it'd be changed to a 332 cabinet. What the difference in height, I believe, is 18 inches that it would get taller. Yeah.
Whoa. Slight reaction.
And yes.
Go ahead.
At least on that first one you showed us, it's 2 distinct cabinets. Is one new cabinet replacing those 2? Is that, or is it just one of those gets taller?
I believe both of them get taller.
Both of them get replaced and get taller?
The larger cabinet, Steve, is a...
Needs to be on mic. You need to be on the microphone.
Come on up here to the microphone.
With me is Bill Davis, project engineer for the fiber optics project.
Okay. Hi, Bill.
Hi, how are you? The... Back to the other
Back to the
wrong one. Sorry. The one cabinet, this is an actual, this is a 336 cabinet, and because these dimensions are pretty much fixed, we're going to a taller this is a battery, this is called a battery cabinet, which is basically just another cabinet allowing the storage of either more patch panels to terminate the new fiber that's coming in, and allowing some additional fiber to be collected in here for future use by other city agencies that may wish to tie in. This is the primary cabinet. This would be a secondary. However, we're going to end up having to extend them upward because we have no room to extend them outward. So they will be a bit taller than the existing surround there, both of them.
You need to get the mic closer to your face.
Yeah, pointing at you. But both of them will get taller? So there'll be 2 new cabinets, both of them a little bit taller. Okay. And then the second one here, are those 2 separate cabinets?
That's one just major cabinet assembly.
Okay. So it'll be replaced kind of in kind except 18 inches taller.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
And that's the same also for Gutierrez and State Street.
Now, in both of those instances where you don't have the concrete on either end, do you have the opportunity to go wider instead of taller? Obviously, that would cost the landscaping there, but...
Well, that was our consideration when we were reviewing what we could use. We were trying to maintain something that wouldn't alter the actual planters and so forth and so on. There's an opportunity, I suppose, to
That is a 236 again with a battery cabinet connected. So we probably could go to the there and may have the capacity to do that rather than going up. I think that this is the one where we got most of the oohs and ahs, right? Because this is,
Would both of these instances get 18 inches taller?
Yes, both of these. Yeah, they're yes.
Okay. And so how many total locations in town are we talking about changes to cabinets?
This is
just these three?
These three plus this is the corner of Yananali and State Street. This one's a little bit more difficult. See right here, this pad, this would be where the cabinet would begin at, and that's the extent of how much room the cabinet would. Yeah, it would be the footprint.
It's a cabinet.
Okay, and it would be as tall as that existing unit, or more or less?
Yeah, it's the same.
And it will have the battery cabinet
attached to it, so it'll be slightly wider.
This being a USPS
drop box.
Well, it's not a drop box. It's actually something that was serving that general area. So we really have no jurisdiction there. This is an actual power pedestal for that particular intersection that goes across, of course, into the depot.
Does this one have to be above the floodplain? That's why this is on a pedestal. No?
Just older equipment.
That's just a much older version of, in modern day, you don't see any pedestals like that, unless it's a very small installation. That's just an older design.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, may I ask, are there clearances required around these cabinets so they may not be housed by anything?
Access, but not in the same way that there are in electric panels and so forth and so on. I think it's more related to, well, it's related actually to access, to ready access, and then to some heat.
So there are clearances which are required, and what are they?
It would. I don't know the specific questions of that. I just know from the traffic operations, if there's some issue with the light, they need to have quick and easy access and to be working within the cabinet and be able to see the traffic and the light at the same time. So that's out of our
I guess
it is a safety feature as well, because sometimes you have to work out in the street, and we all know what that.
Well, I guess the salient question would be: is there anything you access from the top of the thing? Could something be added to the top if that was the direction of the?
Yeah, that's what you had in mind.
Commission.
Yeah.
And then those first three examples you showed us obviously were painted Malaga green at one point. Would the new ones be field painted?
Not field painted, and that's something that Facilities Division has asked me to just touch on. I mean, it's kind of a preferential thing. I think I understand the original concept of this Malaga green and that process. We find that all over town we have a variety of different colors. And we're kind of wondering if it should be a case-by-case basis, where in some cases you already have other adjacent cabinetry that's brushed or some other kind of a color. We're perfectly capable of having these cabinets powder-coated by the manufacturer to any color, of course, that we provide for them. So it's really
up to the HLC on the condition of the color.
Alex, you had a question?
Yeah, I think it was partway answered. If one were to combine those three elements, would there be a way to do that?
As I say, the one on the left, Alex, is a USPS property. So we could work through them. I don't know if that's even still in use, but we could make an effort to do that. The other ones, the difficulty there is you're going to have to make it, unfortunately, you can't minimize that dimension.
No, but can they be grouped with a planter and kind of put them together? Do something to kind of wrap them up together? Yeah, okay.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Boucher?
I was just going to question the fact that on several of these, the planting is obviously and it seems to me that we could start over because there have been some that have been.
We could do
Yeah.
that. Yes, we can do that.
There have been some that are that it goes around them, and it softens them a lot. And I think we really need to, like this one also. They're just leaning out, and
We'd be open to that. That's fine.
okay, thank you.
Obviously, this one has access from this side, and presumably there's panels on the other side that are accessed. Would that continue to be the case, that both those sides need access?
I have a request to speak for him from the public. Kellum, if you'd come forward at this time. If staff, if you would turn that speaker around for him, please.
Thank you. I'm sorry that we have to have this additional bigger street furniture, and everything seems to be that has to come in the color the manufacturer provides. And I'm not sure about what I didn't quite hear why they can't be boxed or put in little appropriate, housed in appropriate Pueblo Viejo structures. And I know they have to have access, but still, maybe they could be disguised in some way. Also, I applaud Commissioner Boucher's idea of planning them out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. Anyone else from the public? Close the public hearing. Back to the Commission for comments.
Chair, I just wanted to add that if they did landscape around these cabinets, they would have to make sure there was sufficient pedestrian clearance that would meet transportation planning's requirements.
Good point. Thank you. Commissioner Pujo.
Yeah, I will speak to the cabinets, the second part of the project. And I think I would like to see plans and elevations brought up with the concept of integrating them into some kind of structure. It seems like in the past there was an attempt, more or less successful, to do something with those pieces of equipment. There was sometimes a piece of planting on each side, or a wall on each side, or some kind of an attempt to do something out of this. So I would ask you to do the same with the new equipment. It may be a little bit different this time. Maybe they are so tall that they may need to have a little bit of a trellis thing, so the plant go up and over, and I don't know. I don't want to design it for you, but I think you need to engage the services, design services of somebody who can do this type of thing, so they all look like something. And I think they should be powder-coated Malaga green, so they're all the same and so forth.
Definitely.
So that's for that. I really don't have a solution or anything to add to the gates and the ticket dispensers. It might be one of those cases that it's better to leave them alone. The gates will never look historic. They don't look historic now. They will never look historic in any means. And I think that perhaps if you add more to those, it may not be successful. So I don't really have a comment on that part of the project.
Alex, may I just address one issue?
Not yet. Oh, not yet. Wait till we finish, please. Steve?
As far as the ticket spitters and the gate arms, I don't have a problem with them. They are what they are, and I appreciate that the new ones are sleeker than the other ones that look like library book return boxes or something like that. So, yeah, I think leave well enough alone with those. As far as the cabinets, I entirely agree with Commissioner Pujo that you need to engage somebody to help come up with a solution, an approach to kind of blend these in. I would rather see in those instances where you were proposing going taller that you take out that landscaping and go wider and keep the height down. I think it's the height that's more imposing visually than width would be. And I would think that it would be possible to just remove paving area at each end of those and put new landscaping there. It doesn't have to be in that raised planter necessarily. And I'm thinking that certainly wouldn't want to see something poking part above and part below the arc of the concrete things. Those may have to go, or you come up with a different solution for there. But I think some kind of roof structure, I think some of our news racks or things like that have a little bit of a canted roof on them, which also keeps people from setting garbage up on top of there. So, that might just kind of soften the look. And the manufacturer, you might be able to have a structure that's got a little molded edge to it with a little sloped roof on it, and it's all painted Malaga. And no tile. I think Malaga is probably the most practical. I think it just doesn't show scuffs. I don't think painting it out a building color is necessarily the best solution.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Adams?
I appreciate you using the smallest equipment that you can on the ticket spitters and the arm gates. However, I saw a photo with some planters that seemed to work not terribly, somewhat close to these pieces of equipment. And I would like an effort made to see if you can integrate container plants in front where it might show on the kiosk gate island. I'm thinking about parking lot. I think 11 where it's out of doors. I think a planter might take your eye off this very modern equipment. And I think that needs to be explored for each location. Maybe it's a heavy-duty planter. Maybe there's a drip irrigation that goes to it and something very hardy. But after seeing a picture of the ticket spitter with a nice sturdy planter in front, it really kind of softened it, and my eye went really to the planter, to the plant material in a container. So I think that should be explored.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes.
Commissioner Naylor?
I asked a question about the access because my first thought was to try and house this in some way, and I found myself agreeing with Commissioner Peugeot and Commissioner House. But I would add one proviso that when you design, or whoever designs this, that it not be an attempt at an historical housing that looks like it's a cage for a machine. That it be functional, as Commissioner House said, so that garbage is not stacked on time. In other words, not just a decorative cage around it. I would prefer if it were thought functionally, and that there was a reason for the housing that goes around it. And my feeling about the ticket dispenser and the gate they are what they are, and I think that Commissioner Adams' statement about the landscaping makes a lot of sense.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Boucher?
Any effort, as far as I'm concerned, to keep these from going up the full 18 inches would be really, really appreciated. And I think there is a way of planting around them, which would help a lot. It has helped in other instances farther up the street. The kiosks, I agree. I think the idea of putting a planter near them is a great idea, if it could be worked out. And I do hope that when you begin to trench around our major landmark, the train station, that you'll be very careful, and that also when you're doing this trenching, please don't start November 1st, okay? Thank you.
Was a week before Fiesta.
I have another question about the pull boxes that you show on here. Are all pull boxes existing, or are there some new ones?
Well, there is actually...
Sir, you need to speak close to the microphone. Drag that with you if you would, please.
Well, let me make my point and then...
99% of them, Steve, there are one or even two that I can think of that are new.
And do those go in street pavement or in sidewalk pavement?
Same location. The one I'm...
Sir, you need to speak to the microphone, please. It's not on? If you press the button again. Thank you.
Oh, I was safe until now. The two that I can think of right off the bat are on the run down, the pull down Anacapa Street, and they're antiquated, small pull boxes that will literally be a bit larger.
But they're in the
cut.
Sidewalk or in the street?
In the sidewalk. Everything's
Let
in
me
the
just
sidewalk.
express what my concern is so that you can address that. Lately, newer water meter and vaults and gas meter vaults come with a plastic rim to them and maybe a concrete cover. And those plastic rims don't age well. They may be gray plastic to blend with the sidewalk, but just wouldn't want to see the city adding more of those. And we expressed that on another project, if they could be actual concrete or if they're a cast iron product.
Let me ask you, Steve, all of the ones that were put in the lower State Street development over the last several years, those are called number 5 boxes. That would be the type that we would prefer to use.
Maybe you could just
can
bring
you think
a cut
of any
sheet
that
on those.
That would be fine.
That'd be good.
That would be fine. I mean, because having looked in hundreds of boxes in the last 2 or 3 months, I can't remember exactly which one would be the model, but that's what we can do.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? My own comments. You know, I own an Apple laptop, and I bought it because I love the stainless steel, and I'm intrigued by the little apple that lights up. And you know, I don't put a mantilla on it when I take it downtown, even during Fiesta. I do. I love that. I bought it because it's gorgeous. And so what do I like about it? I like it because it's brushed stainless steel and it's clean and it's modern and it is what it is. I think I'm remembering back when I first got on the commission, Louise would remember those security lights on what was the Bonds by the Arlington Theater? And we took these little modern fluorescent lights, and Henry designed these absolutely exquisite little sunbursts around them to make them Hispanic, and I've never seen anything more ridiculous in 20 years. Don't try too hard.
Yeah, I understand.
Make it as quiet as you can. A nice, simple, modern piece of equipment that's streamlined, without a lot of stuff sticking out of it. You've done that part of it. I somewhat disagree about decorating the box. Get as simple a box as you can and paint it dark green and stop. And then screen all of this stuff with as much landscaping as you can possibly do, and you'll spend the city's money very wisely. So we'd like to see you again with a detailed proposal showing us how you intend to screen this with landscaping. The box as simple as you can get it, and as dark a green as you can get it. And if rather than industrial gray, I'd even like those in brushed stainless steel. I think it's a preferable color to industrial pale gray.
Mr. Chair, could you clarify for the applicant what the Commission's choice is? Because it seems to me that there are actually 2 different positions here, and maybe you could have a straw vote on which would be preferred.
I think we're uniform in wanting the boxes Malaga green, right?
The traffic box.
The cabinets. What about the equipment? It's being proposed in light gray. As
talking about
the ticket spitters.
Ticket spitters are just as they are, but without the wording on it.
Where's the picture of the Granada?
That I want to clarify a little bit.
That looks pretty shiny to me.
Yeah, that's the shiny. That's the shiny. The other, the columns is what they're called, are more of a matte kind of, almost metallic, but it's a little more
brushed aluminum.
No, this is a brushed aluminum. This is a kind of a brushed aluminum look to it, but it's not. It's a factory applied finish. It's more of a gray.
And it's not a metallic.
It's not the shiny metallic. No, and it's the new ones get rid of the yellow in the front, but that's the factory applied finish, and that's how they come, and they are pretty. They're the most unobtrusive forms we could find. We were with the same thing. Some of the other ones are these big bright yellow things. Most of the other manufacturers, so you see them, so you don't hit them when you come in. So we had to kind of balance that a little bit. We're not necessarily saying we're going to do that out.
Do they come with the yellow? We could apply, a Spanish pattern to the yellow post. Sorry. What is the consensus? No one talked about the color of the
my
ticket
comment
spitters.
would be,
I'm fine with them.
I actually would like a reduction of this yellow, especially
They are.
this
the new,
kind,
yeah.
the new kind.
This is
because
the old,
one
yeah,
at the
this has been
Granada is
changed.
very yellow, and thank God it's inside the building, so you don't see it as you
Yes,
come
we're
down.
So this is the only
I'm just
yellow.
really concerned that you get a lot of yellow, and it's just going to be yellow.
It actually now, because everything comes out of that. If you're paying credit card, you go to the yellow. It's just the one throat. That's where the ticket comes out.
So let me interrupt you. The preferred preference of the majority of the commission is the color as proposed.
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Chair, could you give them clarification on whether a structure would be required to cover the cabinets or if landscaping would be sufficient?
I'm stating that I think, well, let's take a straw vote so I know exactly how you feel. Okay, how many commissioners would support landscaping as a means of screening the boxes?
You mean without any other?
Without any, just landscaping.
But you're not just.
We're talking back to traffic boxes. I'm sorry for interrupting.
These traffic boxes.
Only landscaping.
Only landscaping and Malaga Green.
Is a trellis considered landscape or considered structure?
Structure.
How many was it?
I don't know. Hands again.
1, 2, 3, 4?
Keep
Four.
it simple.
So 4.
So it's 4S, 4 no.
We have any source of the water. This is what I wanted to bring up before at the.
Sir, please. That's for you to solve later. Okay, then how many commissioners want an embellishment of the boxes?
Such as a roof structure.
A roof structure, a rough.
In addition to landscaping.
In addition to landscaping.
I prefer trellis, kind of like.
Some type of structure.
treatment. How many?
Whatever. As a direction.
How many?
3.
3, thank you.
In favor? How many commissioners want both?
Oh, yeah, both. Yeah.
Both landscaping and an architectural enhancement of the box.
I guess
4.
I guess the concern was that a designer or somebody chosen to consider all the various things, not one or the other. I guess I'm just concerned about that.
I think we're
Just
unanimous in that.
Just speaking for myself,
Yes.
if these can be lowered and have adequate planting around them, it seems to me it's better to leave them as simple as you can without calling attention to them.
That's why I voted the way I did.
I would just like to add that it's kind of hard to make a judgment without seeing elevations of what it is they're proposing, and I think that's the next step.
I mean, my intent in the straw vote was to send the applicant off with a clear direction of what to do, whether they should sit there and fuss with a little rough on the top or a pergola on the top or bury them totally in the ground, or whether just coming back with a real proposal of green boxes and nice landscaping on either side whether they should put their effort in one or the other. And unfortunately for you, we do not have a consensus,
Mr. Chair?
other than we don't like what we're seeing right now today.
Mr. Chair, may I jump in and provide a suggestion? Perhaps we could direct the applicant to go back and study the two alternatives, and you could choose at your next meeting.
That's
great.
that's the direction they're getting by default. Thank you. They'll clarify.
One more.
Mr. Chair?
One more question. Yeah.
Just to clarify your point initially, which was the streamlined, simplified box, I think part of what makes them look so gawky is that you have two boxes at each location. Would it be possible to have just one box that would house all the equipment, regardless of what size it has to be? It's one clean box instead of multiple boxes.
That would definitely be a preference.
There is when you're attaching a battery box to a 332 cabinet, it is essentially just an extension. I mean, they all bolt up together, so they'll appear to be one box, much more than these older units do. It's just it will appear to be one large housing.
Good.
Okay. Now, sir, you're out of order. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, sorry, one more thing.
I need to wrap this up.
I'm trying to make it quick. The applicants requested that you consider approving the ticket dispenser at this meeting if you're happy with it, and then continue the cabinets to another meeting, if it's your pleasure.
Although staff tends to dislike splitting up
split
an
an approval
application
like that because they can't pull a building permit for half of the
We don't need
project.
it.
Mr. Chair, we're asking them also to explore for the ticket spitters where they can soften a view, especially from the outside with a planter. It doesn't mean it has to be attached to this thing at all, but to soften it. So I thought that was,
Yes.
how do people feel about that?
I think that's the consensus of the commission. So, can I have a motion to continue this for 2 weeks or much longer? Give me a second. Okay. With the recommendation to the applicant that all of the equipment being proposed be screened with landscaping. That some solution to mitigating the visual impact of these boxes be pursued, either with an additional decorative element or screening elements or simplification elements. That the commission accepts the ticket dispensers and arms as a design and material as being compatible with the guidelines. Would you make that motion, Mr. Adams?
So moved.
And a second, please?
Second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, could I suggest softened landscaping instead of
Screened, which implies kind of like blocking it out.
Yes, yes. And the maker of the motion accepts
Yes,
that change?
absolutely.
And the seconder?
And Mr. Chair, would it be okay to include that, if preferable, that the height of
Yes. That as part of the mitigation, that the height be reduced wherever possible.
Yes, so moved.
Okay, great. Anything else? That clearer?
Yes, thank you very much.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We need one copy of everything in front of us.
Let's see. You guys have that. This was my copy.
Okay.
This was mine. This is mine. And you guys, take that.
What else?
Do you want my other sets?
Anything else that they reviewed that I didn't have?
No. That's you. Yeah, those are more part of the. Yeah.
Oh, only because. Okay, we'll take a 5-minute recess. Oh, you're here for the next one too. Oh, then we'll just move right in. I'm sorry. This is for 310 and 402 East Ortega Street?
Yes.
That was a good introduction to this one.
Again, my name is Bill Davis, project engineer. As you can see, I just got hit with a cold overnight, so I'm not
So you need to
functioning
stay close to the mic, please.
Stay close to the mic, okay.
You had handed in, I believe, 2 sets.
3, actually.
3.
This is all you
I
have.
remember 3 sets. And
I may
believe-
have walked off with it earlier.
Yeah, I think that's.
Or Jaime has it.
That's going to be...
Anyway, there were 3, so let's pass this down. Are those the same as these?
They are.
Could you pass one this way?
Well,
or you have them marked?
This is the primary one. I do have them
Okay,
marked for
then you
presentation.
need to put it right there
Okay.
and point
How
to
do I
it
do that?
In a way that the public can see it.
Well, actually, we start with this. I mean, this
Locate it for me first.
we have Guna Street. We have, actually, let me see if I can organize it properly. We'll do it the other way around. Laguna, we're over in this neighborhood over here on.
It's over there
on Garden Street. So it's the middle of the corporate yard here, and again on the other side of Laguna Street, there are 2 other structures involved. These are all the metal Butler buildings that were built, I believe, in the 70s, constructed in the 70s. This is a partnering project that the city of Santa Barbara has with 2 other partners. One, the banker, Tioga, and the other is EI Solutions, which is the design build partner. The conceptual, I would like to walk you people through. The 30% submittal is simply something that has a few details that may help to explain in greater detail any concerns that you have about appearance or anything of that nature. So if we can focus on the conceptual, and this will only be referred to a couple of times.
In sheet A, please.
Great. That's that. The cover sheet. I'll just try to walk you through this process so that we can stay on track here with this. Obviously, the cover sheet is just the existing condition at these 2 sites, if you will. Sheet 101, essentially a duplication. However, it's just showing the panels in place. I've set it up this way so that we're lined up with the streets and where we are. We're sitting approximately over here right now. So this is behind us, and then again across Guna Street. So here are the, I say approximate, very, very close to the precise location of all the panels that are being proposed. Interesting. I should stop myself for one moment here. In the midst of this submittal, actually after the submittal, we discovered that the Garden to Laguna block is within the El Pueblo Viejo district under your jurisdiction, and across the street is outside of that, so in the jurisdiction of the Architectural Board of Review. And as a result, I've made a second submittal of almost the same material to them for the next hearing with them. So we're going to be dealing exclusively with the Garden to Laguna Street between Ortega and Coda Streets. Therefore, these 4 buildings are the ones that we're focusing on, and they're identified as buildings 2, 3, actually, building 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you look at the red arrows and the numbers, we'll be focused on viewpoint 1, which is the opening off of Ortega Street, our gate entry over here off of Ortega Street. 2, which is the gate entry off of Laguna Street, and 5, which is outside of the corner from across Coda Street, looking back towards the corner of Coda and Laguna Streets. These other 2, 3 and 4, are for Architectural Board of Review consideration.
Mr. Chair, I apologize, but some information's come to light that we need to address before you get too deep into this. This is the El Pueblo Viejo Landmark District map that came out of the Chapter 22. According to this, the buildings across the street are in the...
Oh, really? Okay,
this
well...
will all come under the jurisdiction of the HLC.
Excellent. Okay, then this was the correct submittal. So we will be, in addition, dealing with viewpoints 3 and 4, both from across Laguna Street, looking east, or on this side of Laguna Street, looking east. That will change this a little bit. Now, each one of these viewpoints, so if we turn the page to sheet 102, and we can consider the viewpoint 1, and you'll see...
I need to rotate it, sir.
Okay, so that you can... That's fine. So that you can see, looking from Ortega Street, southeast into the corporate yard. This is a center. This is really simply a before photo, if you will, and a photo identifying what it will appear once it's installed, how it would appear. So you see these are the identical photos. They're just the lower photo here identifies the location of the modules and what they will appear like
After installation.
Yeah.
Before and after pictures.
Quick question?
Yes.
Yeah. How tall are those buildings?
How tall are the buildings?
Yeah, like the lower piece, the lower...
Well,
is
there
it like
they
10
are,
feet?
Alex. I
10?
didn't.
They're about 12 feet.
12 feet?
Yeah.
I would say at the eave they're probably 12 feet, with a very slight pitch. Very slight pitch. Next is viewpoint 2, which is around off of Laguna Street, looking. What would that be? Southwest into the corporate yard, and this is what you would see, which is, as you can see, very little. Now I said NA will pull that because Jacob has found that this is all HLC material. So 3 again. That's looking across the street that's looking eastward, and I'll pull that too, Bill. 4 will be the same. 5.
As you can see, most of the roof surfaces are not visible from the street. To inform the Commission, I've seen this project prior to the meeting, and asked a lot of questions, most of which were answered. So talk to us about this part of it.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Talk to us about this part of it.
The if you go back to very briefly back to sheet 101, I believe it is, you will also see reference to numbers 6, 7, and 8 in black.
Here.
These 3, 2 on Laguna Street side, and 1 on the. I'm sorry, 2 on the east side of Laguna Street, and 1 on the west side. Those are the locations. I say selected. They were selected by virtue of the fact that everything is, all of the space inside of these buildings is so overused that there really isn't any alternative but to coming outside of the building and installing the inverters, which take the power from the panels and then transfer it to the service meters, which then will account for how much power is being put back into the grid at any given time. This one, sheet 108, is an indication of the lower of the existing elevation of that corner of Building 2, which would be the northeast corner of Building 2. On the Guna Street side, you see you already have landscaping. The proposal is to place the inverters there, and this is shown without the screening. However, there are notes to the effect that, first of all, this has to be secured within an enclosure for the purpose of protection of both the equipment and pedestrians or anyone in the area. And then the proposal, and we're proposing, if you look at it a bird's eye or plan view here, you see that you have a significant amount of landscape area between the actual inverter and the inner edge of the sidewalk. So we were proposing then, of course, to screen that area with landscape tall enough to hide the installation. So I don't know. Would you like me to turn that page?
There's also a chain link fence along the sidewalk.
No, but there is a.
No, isn't it here?
No,
it's here, on the other side.
It's here. Actually, much of that there is some there.
There is landscaping.
There is very low landscaping right now. Okay. Kind of random, but you see that there are evergreens planted there, and in order to do this, we'd have to probably eliminate those. This was a preliminary from EI Solutions to just create 2 planters, one on either side, and then plant the remainder down at grade.
Okay.
On the east side of Guna Street, the existing condition again, the lower left-hand corner, the existing elevation, and then the proposed. The signage here would have to be moved. Let me see, there's... But the planter, the raised planter, there's substantial room to move the sign from where it is out a little bit, remain easily within the planter, and just move it down here a bit, allowing this larger area, and then terminating the raised planter a little bit earlier than it currently is, and again place the inverters at grade to minimize the height, and then again an enclosure and screening in the planter area in front of it. I guess.
And then there's pictures of what the boxes look like.
Right, these are the boxes themselves.
Okay, thank you. Not quite yet, Mr. House. We have Heather Baker here also.
Good afternoon, Chair Lavoie and members of the Historic Landmarks Commission. My name is Heather Baker, project planner with the Design Review section, and I visit you when we have solar projects for your review.
Welcome back.
Thank you. So I just wanted to give a little bit of context for this particular project to the Commission. This is a very important project from the Council's perspective. It went for their authorization at September of '07, and there was unanimous support for this project. The city really strives to be a leader in the area of sustainability, and this would be a great milestone alternative energy project. In fact, at that September 07 hearing, a couple of the comments from the council members were specifically to make sure that this project would have the maximum amount of kilowatts generated as possible. So that does create a situation where the panels are getting closer to the streets, obviously, as you're covering more roof space to get more kilowatts, and that is what the council has directed for this particular project. Now, it's also important to note that the scope of work for this project includes being as aesthetically pleasing as possible in the way that is done, okay? And I also wanted to talk a little bit more about, of course, acknowledging that the Historic Landmarks Commission does have concerns when solar panels are proposed on historic structures. And as, of course, as you know, these structures behind us are not historic, although they are in the edges of the El Pueblo Viejo district. And I know that you also have concerns in the district in general with having the panels look as appropriate as possible. For example, with the solar panels across the street the other way for the Summer Solstice building, which were reviewed by you. You made sure that they looked as appropriately as possible integrated with the building. So given that, I also wanted to just point out that it is at the very edge of the El Pueblo Viejo district. If you who has the map, if we could put that up again, that would be helpful. I've highlighted it there in yellow. You can see this is the El Pueblo Viejo Landmark District. And, of course, the area of most concern to the community would be right along the State Street corridor usually. That's the most frequented area. We do, of course, value the whole district, but just it is important to acknowledge that this is a very far corner of the district and probably one of the least frequented area of the community. And also, the structures behind us do have the white cool roof systems. Those were approved by the HLC in August of 2006. Now, typically in the El Pueblo Viejo district, it's not the preferred roofing mechanism, but with the new Title 24 regulations, that has been necessary to upgrade this building with that. And so we're basically looking at a situation where aesthetically the buildings behind us are somewhat non-conforming as to the normal EPV standards, and that's the current status. And so one way to look at this might be that the white roof, changing that to solar panels, the difference in the aesthetics is not that great. I mean, you already have a non-ideal situation. It's at the edge of the district, and perhaps, you know, this isn't it's not like you're losing a lot of ground here. These aren't perfect historic buildings or anything like that. I guess then my last point is just that there are a number of design factors that have already been included that really help to make this the best possible aesthetic design. Of course, when you're doing a solar project, you're looking at cost, performance, the structure, and its integrity for being able to function. And a number of compromises were made in this project, I believe, already, and feel free to expand on this, Bill, if you'd like. But basically, there is a parapet for one of the buildings, and the angle of the panels is such that you will not see them beyond that parapet wall. They've taken advantage of that height. Now, this is different, mind you, than what happened at our fire station, where the panels actually did extend above that parapet wall and are visible from Milpa Street. For this project, you will not be able to see them from the street. They've made sure of the tilt for that. And then also for other parts of the project, the panel tilt has been minimized as well to be as close to the roof slope as possible. And so that really makes a difference in the amount of framing that you can see from the street. So I think those are things that we can appreciate about the aesthetics of this project. Last, there are a lot of existing trees around the perimeter of this site, and those will help with the screening from the pedestrian point of view from the sidewalk in quite a few areas. And so I just wanted to kind of give you that context, and I'm available for any questions. We also do understand that this is a city leadership project. We also understand that you do have concerns with aesthetics, and so like the normal caveat is to of course we don't want to add costs to this project, but I do think that given that we're working with ourselves here within the city, if you have some simple suggestions that they might be open to, that would probably be appropriate for small items. Okay, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Before
I'm sorry. One more item. We do from our environmental review staff. And he's available to answer any questions about the CEQA analysis that was done to exempt this from further CEQA review, if you'd like.
Thank you. Really? Just a moment, Callum. Don't go far. Again, speaking to a long history on the commission, we have in the past looked at two projects that I can remember for the yard over here. One of them was an addition to one of the buildings, and it was on the street end of, and I can't even remember where.
It's the same area.
Right there?
Yes.
And I remember one of those tortuous sort of series of meetings trying to make the addition look Hispanic and compatible at the same time. I don't think that proposal was built, actually. It was at the end of one of the buildings. And anyway, subsequent to that, we had looked at a modification of an exposed bay to incorporate a lunchroom, I think it was, in some of their service quarters. And in that latter discussion, we talked extensively about the incompatibility of the Butler buildings and the fact and questioned why the block was included in the district at all when those buildings were already built, and wrestled with it and came to the conclusion at that point, giving us the precedent today, that the full weight of the guidelines have not been applied to that part of the city unless we were talking about a major remodel of the entire facility, which is not being proposed today. The other part of my earlier discussion with Heather and with Mr. Lamone indicated that most of the panels are not visible from a public street, and every effort was made to keep them as tight to the roof as possible so that the impact was minimized. The control boxes were a different story. So, to the Commission for questions.
Did we take a public comment yet, or do you want to?
Yes, sir. Oh, to public comment? Yes, I can. Mr. DeForest? Opening the meeting to public comment.
Kellum DeForest. The impact of the photovoltaic panels might affect the view experience of the residents of the Riviera and Eucalyptus Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Forrest. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to address the Commission on this item? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Back to the Commission for questions.
Mr. Chair?
Just a moment, please. Mr. House?
Is there any added chain link fencing?
Only if you consider the protective enclosures that will be around these three inverter locations.
Okay, because I didn't really see that detailed on the plan.
It's not shown. He wanted to leave it as direct, straightforward as possible.
Okay. So in the future, we could maybe see that on the plan. Okay. And then we saw a sample of a solar panel the other day, photovoltaic panel, and it had kind of a pebbly texture and it was kind of non-reflective. Would that be the nature of this, or is it perfectly smooth glass?
Smooth, yes.
I think that was a Sanyo panel, and so that would be a question whether or not it could be something that mitigates concerns about glare from the hillsides. And I also notice on the site plan that there are roofs that pitch both ways that you have solar panels on both pitches. And then I notice other ones where you don't have them on both pitches, and even one building that has no solar panels. So if you're trying to maximize, how come those aren't covered with solar panels as well?
I can answer. I cannot answer why, in fact, these other two structures on the other side, on the east side of Guna Street, were not incorporated. We have. I suspect that within the legislation that surrounds the rebate process and so forth and so on, because it's become clear to me that we had to identify it's beneficial both to the rebate and to the project to use only certain primary panels that are feeding these buildings, and of course at those panels there's a dual metering system, one in and one out. It may have had something to do with location and with the power panels, which two of the primary three are right at the end of the northern end of Building 2. Again, I'm just guessing. You're very astute in pointing out that on Building 3, it's a typical gable, very shallow gable, and whereas on Building 4, there's nothing done on the eastern side, or the side away from the sun. On Building 3, there is an array. That's one of the reasons that I don't know how many of you have seen the initial project that we did down on the on the roof of Fire Station 2, but it's a continuous array, meaning it starts at the roof level and it continues upward. And even though we had a 48-inch parapet down there, in order to get the maximum use out of a relatively small roof, and of course with the shading that parapet provided all the way around, they had to generate a certain angle. They have to do that here as well on the eastern side of Building 3, but they have done so in a different manner, and I think that's something that you might like to see, which is instead of continuing that slope, they've had the adequate square footage where they can stagger it as they have, and thus maintaining a minimal visual from the back side.
Okay, so that's a drawing I don't think we have in our packet, and so
that's in the 30%.
Anyway, so I guess that answers another question, that these aren't all applied tight to the...
Only on that eastern side of that particular pitch, Steve.
Are they offset like that?
Are they offset like that? Because otherwise they'd be non-functional, essentially.
Yeah, I don't see
Steve,
that.
I would also assume, just by looking out there, that panels were omitted in certain areas because the amount of stuff coming up through the roof. There's a lot of equipment on these roofs. Alex, you have a question?
A simple question. How many square feet are we talking about?
There is 300, 1,830. I mean, you can multiply by the 1,830.
Start counting squares, and I'll call you in a day.
I mean, we're talking about, what, 40,000 square feet or something like that?
You know...
Anyone know?
I
lot?
can't tell you that. A lot. There are... Somewhere it was identified that there are somewhere in the neighborhood of 11,000 panels. Is that it?
There's 1,830.
18.
How big is the panel?
I believe they're about 4 by 5 or 4 by 6.
4 feet. 4 feet by 6 feet.
So 20 times that. So you're coming out with what?
Close to 38,000 square feet.
Exactly.
Okay, just to give it a little scale to his presentation. Yeah.
The benefit And she touched on that.
This is the question.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Chair Lavoie, I just wanted to try to help answer one of the questions about why all the roofs weren't covered. It has to do with if the new panels generate more electricity than all the buildings use, then they don't get credit for that extra electricity that goes into the grid. You can't run the meter backwards, in other words. You can only run it to what you would have paid. So it doesn't, the way this whole thing works, it's got to be economically feasible, and the amount of money they outlay has to be justified by what they're going to get back. So that's the reason.
Thou shalt not take money away from. Well, come back. I have a question. Why was it exempt from CEQA?
Well, I did a master environmental assessment. I ran the program, and the only issues that were any likelihood of having environmental impacts were to do with historic resources, archaeological resources, and visual resources. Let's run through those. Visual resources, the building is not exactly the Mona Lisa. It's not it's not of great aesthetic value, in other words. Much of the facility would be screened. The facility would be visible from the distant hills, but it would be somewhat washed out from such a long distance. So I didn't believe that rose to the level of significance. So that's the visual side. The archaeological side, we determined that any excavation would be in fill rather than native soil, so the chances of hitting archaeological resources would minimal. And the buildings are not historic, although it is in El Pueblo Viejo. And so I didn't think it would have a significant historic impact.
Mr. Chair? Oh.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Just a moment. Mr. Jacobus, you've been trying to inform us on something.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, it's interesting what Michael was just talking about. Just so the public knows and the people that might not know, this is where the Laguna Ballpark's at. And it actually, the section of Guna Street behind us didn't go through because the center field went across the street. And so it's possible that the reason why this was included in the EPV was just in retrospect of the fact that the ballpark once existed. Another interesting thing is that we went and augured a hole back here to put an engine lift in, and it was amazing the stuff that came out of the ground, old toys and bottles, and because this is where they dumped a lot of the earthquake debris after the earthquake, so it is just all fill.
Ms. Gantz?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to kind of put out there the fact that the roofs have a cool roof system on them now that was approved. And it seems to me that once those roofs are covered up with the solar panels, they will be less of an impact from the Riviera than they are now. So Mr. DeForest was concerned about what they're going to look like from the Riviera. It's not going to be really clear because it's pretty far this way, and when you look down on it, I think it probably won't be as bad as it is now because the white will be somewhat covered up.
Thank you.
That was, yeah.
The other point to be made, if we alter these buildings, then we won't be able to landmark them 40 years from now.
Chair Lavoie, I apologize for that.
Commissioner Naylor.
Yes. When you talked about the location of the inverters, you made a statement about I think the interiors of the building being majorly impacted, therefore they could not go inside, or how did you derive these locations of the inverters? Because they all seem to be facing Laguna and close to public view, where there are other places in my mind that would be less in the public view.
Well, there are other places. The one here, number 6, actually there is an existing backup generator, which is, pardon me, bad timing. An existing backup generator, and I think that's even shown in here. that will be replaced by this, so there won't be any visual impact on that particular location. The other two, see if I can find that for you. I'm still struggling with seeing things upside down, but it must be back here a bit. Right here. So essentially, it will fit well within this area. Because this particular backup generator is not only essentially non-functional, but all of the people that are in field offices around will be more than happy to see it go away because it's so loud that it's just awful. But the other two, I went with the EI solar engineer. We covered the campus carefully, and it's remarkable how every square inch is in major functional use at all times. The problem with the inverters is if they're enclosed in an interior location anyway, is that because they do generate heat, you have to have a tremendous amount of room around them. So you're not just losing the volume of space generated by the cabinet itself, the enclosure itself, but significantly greater than that.
Right. I'm not asking that they go in the interior.
No, I'm just saying that's why we.
There are loads of other exterior areas that seem not to be quite so close to a public sidewalk.
But unfortunately, all of those are vehicular access areas. I mean, if you walk around this corporate yard out here, you'll see that every square inch of it is accessed, and it's either parking underneath one of these carport, or it's actually within the motor pool, which repairs all of our city vehicles, or it's directly where the cars, the city vehicles, cars and trucks park. The emergency equipment is parked and stored and has to have ready access and so forth. We really made an effort to do that. One of the only area, and then of course over here on Building 1, which is purchasing and central stores, right behind it, which is the pump, if you will, the gasoline that runs our city vehicles. Again, that has storage tanks underground. So we went around and around and around with that, and we felt that by virtue of the need for room around these inverters, that A, we couldn't find any place, and B, it would create such a secondary problem that we see. However, it seems like it's self-serving, but these do happen to be key locations, these two in particular, for removing, for collecting the power generated. It has to go through the inverters and then go to the panel. And if you move it someplace else, what you're going to be doing instead is you're going to be running a lot more conduit, which will be visible as well. Regardless of the fact that you can paint it to match the color of the building, you're just going to see a lot more activity in those areas. So this way, we felt kind of as if we were concentrating the negative into the smallest possible area without impacting all of the functions of the corporate yard.
And the conduit will be exposed. Commissioner Murray, you had a question?
Yeah, I wanted the solar panels. What color are they?
I'm sorry that I didn't try to bring one there. They just appear to be a kind of a carbon gray, a bit of a darker gray. I mean, oh, I'm sorry. Were you talking about the actual panels themselves? They're kind of a deep gray with kind of a deep blue gray color.
Any other questions? We are ready for.
On HLC 109, there's a box with, on the lower right-hand corner of that sheet.
Yes.
One of those boxes has like a pipe on top of it. What's that?
That's the conduit that will take the
from the solar.
From the panel, from the way up top and bring it down. Now, it looks as if it just terminates there. It'll actually just be a sweep around the corner.
What color?
Painted to match. I think there's a note here. No,
painted to match
painted to
the
match
building.
the building, so it'll be as minimally.
I see.
You know.
Okay. And then the other question I have is just one sheet back on HLC 108 in the lower right-hand corner where you're locating that, you're proposing to remove one of those trees in the planter?
Yes.
Okay. Did you consider any other alternate location than taking out a tree?
Well, again, right on this, if you look at the site plan here.
Yes.
The plan view.
Okay.
Right around the corner is where two of the two largest of the three panels, power panels are actually for this entire corporate yard.
Yeah.
So if we move away from that, we will definitely be adding exposed conduits at other locations. Now, again, it's kind of a cost factor. It's to a degree a visual issue as well, because I felt that screening in front of, again, out to this line. This is the inside of the sidewalk, so all of this is planter area. It's raised back against the building, but
that's all planter.
That's all planter. So that's why we felt that we could add additional, tall plantings.
Landscaping. Okay, that's
So-
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Really just kind of screen it off there.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? Steve?
I have no problem with this. If there's any place in EPV that I would have no problem, this would be it. And these buildings, this is another case of they are what they are. And there is so much visual clutter by the very nature of the operations that go on there. I really can't see that this is going to exacerbate matters at all. Comments I would have, no particular order, just the notes that I jotted down. The sign that's proposed to be relocated, that should go before the sign committee so we could evaluate the best location, height, anything like that. The next time you return, I would like to see on the plans where you're proposing additional chain link fencing. The set of plans that I have, at least, did not have those drawings where you showed on the east pitch that you were staggering them. And so I don't know if there are other details that I'm not seeing, but I'm thinking that potentially there might be a benefit to an edge detail if we're seeing a lot of clutter on the roofs, if there was some sheet metal edge that could help conceal that and just make for a clean presentation from where you did see it. That may not be necessary. I can't really judge that right now because I don't have the details to look at. As I mentioned before, there was a sample solar panel that came in that never actually got dragged up for us to look at, but as I was going out the door I looked at it and it had kind of a pebbly texture. I'd like to at least look into that, or considering the angle of these are facing away from the Riviera, if you could at least produce a angle equals incidence, angle of incidence equals angle of reflections kind of study showing that sunlight is not going to glare into people's eyes in the Riviera. That would be useful to show that that's not really a concern. And then last but not least, looking through the pictures, I see there are places where there isn't much in the way of trees, yet there's a large planter area, or there are palm trees, and it seems like it would be a reasonable request that in select locations some additional canopy trees could be added, which helps distract from the visual clutter of the whole campus as a whole. And might also block view, screen view of solar panels.
Thank you, Steve.
I have no problem with the inverters and all of those that presume will be similar to the building. I think they're fine.
And the exposed conduit?
That's fine. It's, you walk around there, I'm sure there's tons of it, and generators and equipment and everything else.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I generally agree with those comments, but I think we need to, really the city needs to do this aesthetically pleasing as possible. I think one of the statements that is probably one of the city goals, and I think it has to lead by, the city has to lead by example. And this is a clear case of landscape to the rescue. You cannot make this thing pretty, so you try to screen it. So I think it's not just reasonable, but it's mandatory that a major landscape plan be introduced to this project in order to compensate for all these things. And I agree that the best thing going for it is the amount of trees along Laguna, but there are openings in the landscape, and they should be reviewed. And I think we should appoint Mr. Adams to a committee to review this, to walk the site with the proposed landscape plan, and really make sure that this is
In your spare time, Mr. Adams.
Yeah. Well, somebody has to do it. Somebody has to do it, and No. Yeah, let me finish the comment. No. This is not for our board to design anything. This is to review the landscape plan, and I think it has to be an important landscape plan. This is an important project. This is not just a little solar panel installation. It's a major solar panel installation, the largest one in the city to date, I believe. So it cannot be taken lightly. I think so. I will make it part of whatever motion comes that the landscape architect be retained by the city to review these issues.
Thank you.
I would agree with most of the comments I heard. I would actually like to propose as subcommittee of the landscape architect from HLC, myself, and the future landscape architect at the ABR to form a subcommittee to review a landscape plan which would be required as part of softening, screening, and improving the landscape aesthetics in the existing planters and planting beds. And my information tells me ABR might very well soon have a landscape architect on board. They do not right now. But when they do, and I think that should be soon, then we convene that subcommittee to go over landscape details.
Would it not be better to advise the city, or I see a motion being formed that would require landscape screening as the mitigation for this installation, inconsistent with the HLC guidelines. Both the equipment on the roof and particularly the exposed boxes and other sundry stuff. And the city would be therefore required to retain a landscape architect, and that landscape architect would come up with due diligence and professionalism, an evaluation of the existing landscape, and knowing that they would have to screen a significant portion of this equipment. And at that point, it would be appropriate to have both you and the representative from the ABR review the plan.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Well articulated, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'd like to move this on to give it a preliminary approval with the condition that a landscape plan be developed, a comprehensive landscape plan for the entire site be developed, with the stipulation that the landscaping is the mitigation for this installation, inconsistent with the HLC guidelines, and that we are looking for, in particular, screening of the And then the converter boxes. And views onto the site from the public right-of-way.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Boucher.
I will make that motion, but after
What?
it's seconded, I have a comment.
Okay.
Okay.
Second by House. Commissioner Boucher.
It's just interesting to me that you went ahead and formed this motion without getting some of our undying comments. I will certainly support the motion.
You have my apologies, Commissioner Boucher.
Thank you, sir.
Was there anything you wish to add besides that? Commissioner Naylor? Commissioner Curtis? Thank you. I have a motion and a second.
Mr. Chair, then that would be what, indefinite continuance?
It would probably be, yes, it would take some time for that to be accomplished.
What was it, indefinite?
Indefinite. Unless you can get all that done in 2 weeks?
I kind of doubt that.
Doubt that.
Should we send positive comments about the function of the solar panels?
There were some comments in the console. They should have the edge of what exactly at the edge.
Yeah,
They look like.
Those in the minutes, so it's at least carried forward, so we remember.
So the comments to be included that that the Commission appreciates the effort already expended in minimizing the visual impact of these solar collectors, but would greatly appreciate any further efforts in painting out and or screening with flashing exposed structural and plumbing elements of the installation, particularly the leader lines to and from the converters.
The maker of the motion accepts that.
So,
Mr. Chair, if I could just add to that.
Yes, please.
Signage to be reviewed by the sign committee. And show on the drawings any proposed additional fencing. And study the issue of reflected glare to the Riviera hillside.
Mr. Chair, we don't normally consider glare to be an issue with solar panels simply because once the dust settles on the panels, they don't produce glare, and they're normally, just washed so many times a year, so the glare might be there for a few days as the dust settles, but it shouldn't be an ongoing issue.
Well,
from a
that's the
staff
same issue with
perspective.
skylights. Their dust settles on them, and they are a glare issue sometimes. So I think it's just due diligence to make sure that this was looked into before it becomes a huge problem.
Maybe you can answer the question, Ms. Baker. They're pointed away from the Riviera, are they not? They're pointed south.
Should not be a problem.
With one, yeah, they actually are. Oh,
they're all pointed south.
Yes, they are.
I'm going to defer to the applicant for that, so that would make sense.
Perhaps if you could provide an analysis that would indicate that the glare towards the Riviera is minimized, either by choice of surface of the reflector, if a pebbleized surface could be used on those pointed in that direction, or in the case that they just building sections that would indicate that that's not the case might solve that question. Okay. Anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Good luck.
Thank you.
I'm going to recess the commission for 5 minutes.
That's a great idea.
Put on that at the last meeting.
So we actually did pull back the dimension here a little bit off Valerio. I included in this package just
Which is
for reference.
17 feet.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
for reference again, Bob's landscape plan. We didn't change that for this round. I think the real intent was to look at, that's the floor plan if you care, to look at the elevations at 1/8 inch, which is what you directed us to. And I think pursuant to the comments, my feeling is to just let this be very simple and do a revealed wainscot here that would be painted dark rather than putting stone on this to keep the stone on these two garden walls. This one obviously being critical to doing away with that sense of entrance at State Street. And then what I'm proposing is kind of a double tile detail at that back, what is going to be really that simple backdrop wall. So that would be something like this. I've got a couple of the copies of these. And then to do a more traditional parapet cornice detail on these two flat-roofed elements. So we refined the openings a little bit, obviously, and then I also have, just to view it with the caveat that, of course, this is without landscape, but this gives you some, going around the building, kind of a sense of what that massing looks like. So this is the view from the corner, of course, at Valerio. This is looking at that new main entrance element a little bit further up State Street, and then this is the back area, the parking lot side of it.
And then keeping in mind the landscape plan, which is meant to break up this expanse.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, it's obviously our intent that this really just is, as Bob described at the last meeting, gets heavily landscaped. And I know, Robert, you had some recommendations to Bob on what, on the mixing up of that, but that, again, conceptually remains the same as what we reviewed with you the last time. So I think that's it. Oh, I did look, I looked at this, Tom. I'm so sorry. I brought a photo. I had a photo and I forgot it. It's kind of a, as you said, Bill, it's sort of a 70s tile. I thought about where to somehow incorporate it into this, and I didn't have any strong feelings. I mean, certainly one option would be to do a tile wainscot, but it just didn't seem to do the job of balancing this necessarily. But I'm open to suggestions on this. Certainly, I know Dr. Allen would. We are going to do repair and whatnot to this building, but to the extent that he doesn't have to spend money on this existing building, I think that would be the preference.
Questions?
Yes.
Mr. Adams.
Trash enclosure?
The trash enclosure is all the way around in back.
Or
no,
what is that?
That is the little patio off the treatment area.
Thank you.
So
Okay.
The trash, just so that you know, that's in the back here. It's currently in this area now, and we are expanding it as this indicates here.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair? I think the comment was made last time, or a question was raised about looking at eliminating that balcony. Did you look at that?
I didn't look at it. Again, I know that Dr. Allen would prefer not to do anything to the building that we wouldn't have to. But I didn't look at what it would take to remove it.
I think the suggestion was to take the 70s off of it, more than eliminate it.
There was some concern about the boldness of the rail. I mean, I think
that's the 70s of it.
Okay. So I think that rail can be toned down.
It goes with the tile.
Now.
Which is what your answer to me could have been. Well, it goes with the tile. And your point is, sir. Colors in the building, Brian.
I'm thinking that we keep it all white.
Even
other than the wainscot, which would be a traditional wainscot color.
Okay.
When you say that's revealed, do you mean you just have a channel?
No. That I'd step it out as I've shown here, so it would have a inch and a half, something like that.
Comments? Question, Mr. Curtis?
The depth of the landscape area that would be in front of that wall? Is it it's pretty 10 foot?
10 foot 11 inches.
Here. Can I see this?
Minus 1.5.
Minus 10 foot 9 and 1/2 inches.
I have a question.
Yes.
You are adding a few square feet on that side under the balcony, right?
On the State Street elevation?
No, I don't think so.
That was on the first plan.
No, you're right. That is still. I mean, and I don't, Tom. That is a holdover, so that it may not be necessary. It was basically an attempt to get some more storage.
Yes.
Alex, would that be problematic for you? No?
Later on.
Okay.
This is an open door, right? Like it's not drawn like a door. That's why I'm
Yeah, it looks like a window, but I guess that's
like
just
a window.
because
These both are doors, right?
that's the
Yeah,
entry.
that would be it would be a large single door within that. Yes.
Okay.
Within the divisions, okay.
Yeah. 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 Those are intended to be doors. Sorry.
Tree trunk to be removed. You
Yeah.
going to leave the leaves?
No, it was just that was a huge. What was that?
It was a huge palm. It's got a stump on it about
So
like
it was
this.
a big Canary Island.
Oh, it's just the trunk is
And it's
all
just
that's
the
left?
stump
Okay.
now, yeah.
Okay. It just amused me.
You may have it.
Although I've seen them used
I
as,
know
as
some of the
coffee tables when they're chopped in blocks.
That garden wall on the Valerio side. That's about 5 feet or 6 feet. It's not very tall.
It's 5 feet. At least that's what I drew it as.
Yeah.
It could obviously it could be taller, but
Yeah, I was wondering if they're like a zoning a situation. I mean, if they're like a height.
It's in the front yard
Yeah,
setback,
it's-
yes.
well, but it's in. I mean, technically I'm in the C2 zone, so I don't really have a setback.
I see.
So I don't think I have a problem. As far as
Okay,
height.
let me make a comment in terms of the question so you can answer. It does seem a little puny in comparison with the massing of everything else. Is there an interest you have in keeping it low? Or
No,
No.
we want that to be, obviously we want the patients who are in there to have privacy, so I just, I feel that these two walls really sort of are anchor elements that want to be similar, but it certainly could be taller and would work fine, and would work better from a privacy standpoint.
Okay. And another, as a question too, the stone pattern that you designed here, is that your preferred thing, or is it something that happened because of the CAD drawing? Is that your
Well,
you like that
no,
pattern?
that's just the CAD pattern. I mean, I would assume that it would be a 5-point kind of a pattern and not
Not a rubber wall.
Right.
Other questions?
But I'm completely open on that as well, if you all have preference.
Comments then?
Well, to tell you the truth, the addition that you were adding, I thought was special last time that because of the sandstone, and with it now expressed in plaster, it's just a long, squat stucco box that I don't find all that interesting, and it was the sandstone that set it apart, and it didn't require a lot of architecture. So I don't know, I'm just having a hard time adjusting to that. I know it's going to be screened with landscaping, but that's not the approach one should generally take to build a shoebox and screen it. So I don't know. I'm struggling with it. And it's not a matter of just changing out the base to sandstone. It had the sense of a garden wall, a site wall that gave an aura of mystery of what's on the other side of that. And it was just kind of romantic. I mean, this looks like it houses industrial equipment, perhaps, and it was dressed up to conceal that. I don't know. It's just, I'm a little disappointed in the direction that it went.
Before I leave you with that, it was this commission that suggested it might be better not in total stone.
Those suggestions were made. I didn't say that.
Okay.
I just want to respond to that. I really like this direction. I think it's simplified with the landscaping. I think it's going to be nice. So I just take just a different point of view on that. I think it'll work really quite nicely, especially with the darker lower half. I really like the simplicity of it, and I like your stucco detail that you indicated.
Are you ready, Alex?
Well, I was just thinking about the houses there. I think there was some continuity in the design with the sandstone going on the patio walls, and that one acting almost like a patio wall. And now that continuity is different. It's not. I'm debating that. I think there's a point that in terms that it did work. I mean, let's just say from the beginning that the wall now is less than 14 feet high. So the wall came down, and that works well. As 14 feet in sandstone, I think that was the comment. It's, well, gee, that's like a tall sandstone wall. 14. It was 18 last time, yeah. And now 14, and I can see that, like, I can see there was a problem then, but I understand Steve's comment. The composition lost some continuity by the different use of materials. This would be like a wainscot, perhaps the only wainscot in the building. It doesn't quite work there. So I think something can be done in terms of making those three elements, the three patio walls, to be more consistent, to have something more in common. I also believe that the other walls, the two other walls, could be taller. I think they will work more in scale with a very tall building. The other two patio walls.
The garden walls.
Yeah, the garden walls. And it would also make the entrance, perhaps as a way to integrate the door into the patio wall, like you see on the side, that that door doesn't have a lintel, or it's just it's not as integrated into the building as it could. Well, I was just saying that by
corner on the front.
By being so short, you get into this kind of situation where
I see the gate.
Well, yeah, the gates, they're. I think that there's a better a way to design this so those three elements become more integrated by the use of materials, maybe. Anyway, it's kind of a difficult project, but I think it's possible. A minor comment on the west elevation, what used to be the main entrance. Being that it's a new wall, and I understand that door maybe has a purpose for some storage or something, or exit, or require exit, or whatever. It doesn't do anything to the existing building. It doesn't make that existing elevation any better. And as a matter of fact, it detracts from it. It takes the symmetry away. There's got to be another way to design that little wall there under the balcony. The building wall I'm talking about. It would be, ideally, it would have like the same glass wall that it has above the balcony. So something that integrates the design. Though I understand that it doesn't serve a purpose for your building now. Other than that, I think this is a good project. Furthermore, I think that their modifications have to go to PC, I believe, right? Or the
yes.
I think it's getting in that territory. Just so we're talking about finessing certain elements. Maybe they could be resolved later on.
Why don't you wait a second?
Okay.
So everyone else is chimed in. Mr. Adams?
No, I made my comment.
Okay. Mr. Curtis?
Well, I think the project has moved in a positive direction. I, again, would like to commend the applicants for improving the parking and circulation pattern on the site. I think the site plan is a much improved compared to the existing condition there. I tend to agree with the viewpoint that was expressed by Commissioner Adams with respect to the stone wall. I kind of like the blank canvas in the back of the landscape area, and I think the stone wall might have detracted from that and also would have been very large. So I like the approach that was taken on that wall. I do have some concern, I think, that was expressed by Commissioner Peugeot about the area behind or on the original building down below. That elevation doesn't seem to be particularly well resolved to me, and I agree that more glass or opening up that area, particularly if it's a garden in that area, might be beneficial. But all in all, I think it's a good project, and those are the extent of my comments at this point.
Commissioner Murray?
I wasn't here last time when this was reviewed, and I agree that this seems to be going in the right direction and good things. I guess I'm sort of halfway between this wall. I can see wainscoting work. Probably, the stone wall I think will just be too long. It's too long of us. But something, and so I guess what sort of wainscoting is it going to be? Sort of tile, or I don't know. I think it's whatever you do.
Plaster, colored plaster.
Just a color plaster.
Yeah.
Yeah, traditional. It's such a long wall, and I think it just begs for little something, and I don't know what that something is.
Okay.
Landscaping. Landscaping.
Called trees.
I guess. Landscaping. Yeah,
Okay.
I suppose. But it just seems so boxy and odd.
Okay.
But
Commissioner Boucher?
I think this is going to work. By the time you get the painted band and the landscaping, I think it's going to be very nice. I do have some concern. I was recently touring with a group from San Clemente, looking at architecture in this town, and we came upon a place where this foam molding had been used, where it had been bashed into, and I'm concerned about how long it holds up.
To my knowledge, it holds up for 20 years. I've been using it for 20 years.
You've been using it?
Yes, I have. If you have to be careful not to use it any place where it is subject to damage, but on a cornice, it's fine. It's actually stronger in some instances, if applied properly, than plaster.
Okay. Well, I can understand
You
it.
know, you tend not to do it where, especially something like a car will run into it, or a cart, or something sharp.
We'll make that Panzer mesh now also, which is an extra durable.
Yeah. If it's installed, I mean, the other thing is it needs to be installed properly, or.
Well, it's funny, you know, the Bank of Montecito up on Upper State Street, they had to completely redo the molding there, and that had been done all in wood, and it just all rotted out.
Rots out.
Okay.
I'm not sure that it's any...
It's actually a little bit stronger than chicken wire and plaster.
Okay. All right.
Which is the usual way of doing it.
Okay. Thank you. Otherwise, I think it's coming along nicely.
To summarize the comments and try to get at a consensus, I'm going to talk about some things. We definitely like the site plan. No problems with there, and we're forwarding our positive comments to the modification hearing officer. We greatly like the lushness and extent of the landscaping. Definite positives. What there seems to be some reticence about is the wall, which has always been a problem. And part of me agrees with Commissioner House that I miss all that stone. But I always think I was one of the ones who said, we'll make it plaster. But Commissioner Peugeot brought up a point that I think is really the crux of the problem, is the integration of the three garden wall elements. If you think of that part of the building as being a garden wall. I agree with this comment that I think those garden walls would be better taller, and that the doorways integrated into them in a more architectural way, which makes me wonder if the wainscot of this section of the building needs to be at the same height as the stone wall, and maybe out of stone with a plaster wall above it, which one can find examples of. And then if that gate or doorway was expressed in a similar manner as the other gates are as a design, that we would have a pretty integrated design and quite attractive, actually.
The only issue with that is that if this rises up, then that wainscot all of a sudden is a 2/3, 1/3.
Yeah, that's okay.
That's all right.
And then bring it up over the door with voussoirs.
Or, I mean, go ahead and have a lint like a lintel over the door.
Yeah.
You now have 146 feet of
Stone. With lovely landscaping in front of it.
I just wonder if the stonework is going to get lost behind the landscaping.
Some of it will, but as you walk and drive down the street, you are going to see it. The other direction to go is to make the stone walls to match the plaster, and I think that's probably not as wonderful as the suggestion of the stone. Steve?
I think that what was successful about the long stone wall before is that it didn't look like building, and it functioned as a link to link these separate flat-roofed buildings. I think when it becomes plaster, it looks like a lot more building, and this is a lot of street frontage to not have any tile roofs in Santa Barbara, and I just think that that's why I'm struggling with it. It's just a lot of flat roof building, and I would certainly welcome you exploring other ways. Certainly it doesn't need frou-frou to kind of add some little points of interest on this long flat wall, but maybe some pitched tile roof is what's needed here. I don't know.
Well, if I may speak to that, I will tell you that after our first review, that is what I looked at, and I think that ultimately, when you look at this, when you look at what this project is now, and when you look at the 3D images, this really is becomes a sculptural composition, and the adding of a tile roof just, to me, throws it off. Because of the strength of this as the anchoring element. These become sort of the quiet, elongated additions to this, and I do think the little, the tile detail here helps to introduce a different material, and it does a lot of work, which I don't think you obviously wouldn't want to do that if it was all stone, but. So the reason I will say that I didn't put the stone on as the wainscot, is the feeling that it was ultimately going to just get lost by that the landscaping that's on the ground is going to end up pretty much covering. Yeah. But I just don't think adding a tile roof is right for this whole concept?
I'm seeing nods.
Mr. Chair?
So
you were summarizing.
No, that wasn't really. I was asking I was posing a consensus, so I'll give a summary as soon as I find the consensus. Thank you.
I mean, I guess I could take the point that you could try to integrate, but I wouldn't want to design it for you. I mean, to me, if that whole 146 feet is lined with stone, it's almost emphasizes a too long horizontal on that plane. So I don't want to design it, but I would say that, the point being that it could integrate better. And
It's like it's 65 feet.
65 feet
is what this
Okay.
wall is.
Oh, okay.
As your client passes out, how much stone?
So the where if this were stone and you had that sort of 2/3, 1/3, that doesn't bother you, where you have a little bit of plaster with a lot of stone at the base. It seems odd to me.
I'd have to see it.
I think the 2-to-1 is traditional. In an interior wainscot, it's either 1/3 or 2/3. In exterior, well, it's not that common, but the proportions are correct. It's 2-to-1.
Okay.
I just don't know that adding stripes to this building is...
Horizontal stripes?
Yeah. Mitigates this long
Well,
horizontal
okay,
building. And bright colors advance and dark colors recede. That was what attracted me to the sandstone. It was a muted backdrop, and this is what you're going to see is a lot of
quite a few
bright
tree
plaster.
canopy. I mean, the trees provided are canopy trees, right?
Yes, they are.
Especially
at the corner.
Especially at the corners. So that white top is going to be the foil for the canopy, at least while the tree is small.
Obviously, we have an extensive landscape. I mean, would you all consider, what if we allowed that element to be engulfed in creeping fig, for instance, and you just let it become a green wall? Is that?
Well, what about back to the integration though? Should the other garden walls be treated in the same way, with maybe a simplification of the gymos on top, a single row of even flat tiles capping the wall as opposed to the double row of corbel tiles, which I think it's a lovely detail, and I think appropriate on the tall wall, but a simplification of it or a hint of it on the shorter walls, out of plaster, with creeping fig, and maybe not. I mean, if we're going to do creeping fig, there's no reason to do the westcott.
Yeah.
And let those three walls then be
green.
Be green.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if we do that, we'll save so much money that I'm sure Dr. Allen would be happy to redo that.
Now, balcony, which we can cover with planters and creeping fig too. So that's a direction to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if your landscape architect will agree with that. But
Good.
Would you go along with that?
Okay, good. So, the consensus. So a 2-week continuance.
Well, I guess the question for all of you,
Well,
is
to
we have to go get
modification
the
hearing
mod,
office.
and we have to get,
So we don't-
believe it or not, we have to get a conditional use permit, even though this parking exists, it's in a residential zone. So
Oh.
those are the two things
Okay.
we need to do. So I'd rather
Continuance,
get
definite.
positive comments on those issues and then come back to you to work out the details.
I think this is a simple enough solution to work with you on that. Okay, so the motion would be for an indefinite continuance, forwarding comments to the modification hearing officer in full support of the circulation plan and relief from the parking requirements, in consideration of the public benefit of the additional landscaping, and
the elimination of 2 driveways as well.
And the elimination of 3 driveways.
3 driveways.
Off of State Street. and in consideration of potential end user of this project. The following comments and recommendations are made to the design: that the building composition, massing, size, bulk, and scale is acceptable, that a reconsideration of the materials of the garden wall and the long section nearest the corner of State and, help me, Arriaga? Valeria. Be treated as green walls, landscaped against a plain surface, with the exception of the longest wall having the detail as proposed currently. That some resolution of the existing State Street entrance of the existing building that respects both the symmetry and integration of any openings into the facade. Be designed in a way integrating it into the design. Is that repetitive? Nice.
I just put it in my notes, fix.
Fix. I wish I could sometimes. Yeah. Then you'd give me this call, Brian. But what do you mean?
Okay, now I'll make the motion.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Oh, and the commission still looks to some resolution of the balcony in a more currently traditional manner.
Fix it.
How's that? Fixed. Can I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Is there any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you all.
The computer models are very handy. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Good luck with the... Actually, you shouldn't have any problem with modification hearing officer.
Do we take all these? Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Our next item is 1019 State Street. Is that Greg? Good.
Oh, you got one.
Greg, if you introduce yourself, please, to begin.
Okay. I'm Greg Reck from Architects West, working on 1019 State Street. Back with improvements based on your comments from our last meeting. The first point is the cornice over the openings above the windows and doors. We made those more prominent, thicker. We went from approximately 15 inches straight across to 20 inches over the windows, and then a more prominent 24 inches over the entry doorway. Added the mullions to the windows. We framed the windows out of wood trim all around to match the doors. Cleaned up that issue above the door head just by using the size of the door, whatever it's going to need to reach up to the existing soffit at that area. The windows themselves, we'll do a paint finish on those. We removed the plaster panel below the windows and changed it so that all of the plaster on the front facade will be a smooth steel trowel.
Thank you. Questions? What are your mullions made out of, Greg?
There'll be aluminum frame that inch and 7/8.
This line right here?
Yes. So it'll match the perimeter frame as well. All the same material. Well, it's painted.
You should draw it that way then. I don't think that's to scale.
No, it's a single line there.
What's the sill on the windows?
The sill is going to be plaster.
And bullnose profile? Or
Yes, yes, just a slight bullnose. We still want to keep it. We want to keep it fairly square to kind of match the cornice details, but it's going to be more rounded down there.
Do you see this as monochromatic or expressing different parts in different colors?
I see the two colors. Primarily, it's going to be the plaster color match existing out there, and then I see the strong wood element with the windows wrapping in, and then the doors being the full height to offset. So I think it's going to be a real strong feature that way with the wood trim.
Questions? No? Comments? Mr. Adams?
I think it's nicely improved from, I like it. It's simple.
Commissioner Boucher?
I'm having trouble with the aluminum windows. And also the style of them, of the cut-ups.
That's the direction you was given last time.
I know. I said the style of the way cut-ups are
That was the
done.
direction you was given too.
The pattern?
Oh,
Yeah.
was it really? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And also, I was questioning the plaster under the windows. If that's going to be white like the building, it's going to get very scuffed, isn't it? You can be like Saks Fifth Avenue and get out there every day with a can of spray paint.
Ever more increasing layers of scuff-proof paint.
I know. I think basically it's a lot better than it was, but those are my concerns. Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fine. I guess the areas that really concern me are that I think you should take off the reference to the existing wrought iron bracket because it's not there now, and so it's a totally new sign application, and I think that that's generally an inappropriate location to be that high up, and so as long as it's there, it's kind of driving certain design decisions. And so I would appreciate if you would give thought to, if you were not hanging a blade sign way up there, where would you put signage on this building? And should the cornice over the door be rethought maybe a little bit as an appropriate location in that panel? Where is an appropriate location for a blade sign? It might be on those pillars on either side, I don't know, but I think you should think about that a little bit, and we shouldn't be just assuming that that bracket belongs up there. I think also, now that you've done this great job on the rest of it, I just think that looking at the pictures, that existing cornice at the top just doesn't have any traditional feel to it, and just it's an opportunity to improve that and make the whole composition an integrated whole. And also, let's see, okay, so you do call out skim coating the existing plaster. So you're cleaning up the whole face of it. I think some thought ought to be given to, is that the best cornice detail that could be there? Thanks.
Steve? The photographs show that bracket.
Oh, I know, but that's earlier photographs. Of course, right now it says American Apparel there, and the bracket's gone.
Long gone. Okay.
Yeah.
Someone's paying attention. Okay. Other comments?
I'll chime in. No, I think this is an improvement over the existing. I appreciate that. I think it's kind of acceptable. It still has, maybe one material too many. I'll just deem it acceptable. It could be better. I think the aluminum breakups, the use of aluminum, I think it's unnecessary in this. You have enough materials to do a great job without that. Along the lines of cleaning up the building, I wonder how the existing pilaster on the right, that is not the same as the one on the left. I wonder if you're putting some replastering, if it could not be fixed and made flush like the other one, and it would make the facade more like one piece. It seems like it's such a.
I could take a look at it because these were constructed as three separate buildings, but from what I can see, it looks like all three were built at the same time. And I could go out there and take a look at it and see if, like, the last pilaster down the street, 2 doors down, has got that same detail to it.
This one's different.
Didn't do that, but we could take a look at it. Yeah, it is. It's pretty slight.
Anyone else? Okay.
I'm still a little concerned about the fact that it looks properly, the building itself. Maybe Steve's comment about raising the panel over the door to allow for signage to go there would help there.
I tend to see that point of view as well.
Chair, may I ask a question? I was not present for the previous review, and can you clarify if we need to abstain or not, if we are not present?
It's at the applicant's discretion.
Go ahead.
Let me read the comment. Since that request was made, let me read the motion to refresh our memory and to enlighten you. The applicant to return with more breakup in the windows. More cross-sectional information is requested. Review the use of a sandstone float finish on the stucco for more appropriate and consistent stucco. The lighting needs to be more consistent. The use of anodized aluminum is not acceptable when the use of painted aluminum is preferred. Correct the proportion of the paneling and the existing cornice element to be more bolder and reduce the high forehead. Restudy and simplify the use of tile, wood, and metal for paneling to be more consistent.
And so, may I ask, this is before, in line with this, and your doors step back, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
No, it doesn't step in, but the
This is consistent across the top here.
across the board. And this is a section through that,
Mhm.
not a section through, but it's at that same flood plane. This plane is the same as this plane.
Yeah, this comes out a little bit further.
They're probably upset I'm drawing on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those guys.
Commissioner Murray?
I wasn't here either, so.
What were you guys thinking of? Is that what you're trying to ask me? I don't know quite how to put this, but it's boring. It's sort of like it's almost acceptable, but it's not quite there. The reason for the middle section popping out is the recess in the door. So it needs to sort of like bleed out, and it needs to be supported as a pop-out element, rather than just enough to sort of like cover the 4 posts. It's a proportional thing. It's sort of like, yeah.
You need some thickness here, maybe?
Well, that's why I was shading it, to try to understand what the real intent of the design is, and maybe I need colored pencils too, to to realize that this element is probably going to be dark, and therefore it's receding too.
Okay, so we could, getting back to Alex's comment, we could thicken that up, make that more of a plaster column there.
Well, if you're gonna support a cantilever, you have to do it in a credible way. So you make this fatter, you bring this out, and you support it with a corbel or something. It cuts down your windows. Usually, merchants don't like that.
We can just bring this column element out.
Or the other solution is to bring this element all the way across. Just very, very simply, which is
kind of what we had last week.
No, but the proportion was small.
Yeah.
The proportion was narrow.
It's number 6, it's just not.
You do have a shadow line here. And you've got one there. It's not as boring as I said. I'm sorry. I apologize. But it's maybe it's suffering from the graphic representation, but it's more interesting than it's one of those things that just doesn't quite. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see thickening this up, and then we could kind of like the idea of having the wood around the windows, but maybe we take that back away again.
Well, your window can come tight there and tight to the plaster, and 1.5 inch reveal of a door of the window sash, and then you really want to show these as having at least a 3/4 inch thickness.
Yeah, we can do that.
Which, if you're going to use aluminum windows, is going to be actually about 1 1/8 inches, as opposed because they just don't make them that narrow.
Well, they're like 1 7/8 inches.
Yeah. So
and then thicken up this element here.
That will really change how that looks.
Yeah.
I mean that's probably what's bothering Commissioner Boucher is it looks like a leaded glass window as opposed to a broken up window.
I was having a hard time with this number 6, that comment number 6 is just not resolved at all, especially reducing the high forehead.
Well, I think I think it's helped a lot.
It's helped. Okay.
Yeah. I looked at it higher and all that, but this
and actually, where'd it go? Commissioner House's comment that this is like asking for the business name in it. That it might as well be big enough to receive the business name in it. In the 10-inch letters they're going to ask for. 8-inch letters they're going to ask for. It's been a while since I've been on the sign committee. Or it could be the address in size letters or something really nice. That it needs just that one more pass.
Okay.
And
the door hardware can make a big difference.
yeah, actually.
I also
conceptual review.
Echo what Commissioner House said about the blade sign. That somehow it needs to come down, be more pedestrian in scale, and that really needs to be looked at.
And I've drawn all over your drawing like I'm not supposed to do. Sorry.
I'm going to make a motion for conceptual approval. I think we're now talking at a preliminary level. This is not here for concept?
We don't have that.
I forgot about it.
Not yet. I'm working on it. So this would be if these elements are resolved, do we need to see this again, or can it go to consent?
This can go to consent if those items are resolved.
Okay, so let's be very clear in the motion. So then this will be...
Because Commissioner Sharp is gone, and he'll be doing consent.
Oh,
Just watch him.
I trust in Commissioner Sharp's ability. So this would be a 2-week continuance to the consent calendar with the following recommendations. That first of all, the blade, the bracket for the blade sign be lowered on the elevation, with some consideration as to the size of the blade sign. That that there be some architectural support for the protruding element in the center, and that element appears supported by that new design.
And what?
Just leave it, period. Too many words. That the window breakups be shown to scale in the size proposed, and a suggestion that the center panel be designed to receive either the address or signage. And door hardware and any exterior lighting should also be included as part of the submission to consent. And colors. Anything to add?
Did you talk about the columns?
I said architectural support,
Okay,
so
thank you.
however he...
When also to repair that, the second...
Oh, the pilaster towards the right or left?
The one on the right.
The one on the right is probably the original.
I think it's the original.
The one on the left was probably filled in.
In order to attach that
You
little
hardly notice that, Alex. I don't think it's worth fussing about. It's
Okay.
kind of a little idiosyncratic thing.
Because you're not quite sure which building it belongs to. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Who made the motion?
Who made the motion?
I did.
And a second? All those in favor? Any opposed?
Getting loopy.
Abstained? Yes, I need another break.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
1704 State Street, Brian Cornell's project?
Yes.
That motion was for indefinite continuance to the modification hearing officer, but that's actually a planning commission case, as stated on the agenda, that I went upstairs to make sure, because I thought maybe I'd made a mistake, but it doesn't indeed go to planning commission, so that motion needs to be
Does it, then
changed.
Okay.
To, put planning commission instead of...
Do I need to formally withdraw the motion, or can I just have
Just
it?
amend it with the...
Then would staff please amend...
I'll amend the motion to say that it should go to planning commission rather than the modification hearing.
Thank you. And
Great.
Adams, is that okay? Commissioner Adams, yes. So, thank you.
Thank you. Steve, I'm going to ask you a favor if you'd step in for this item, please. Only that I need a break.
Okay, where are we? That's the address. Do you have your names, please?
Well,
Brian Gregory.
Okay, your names.
Brian Gregory, owner of 1732 Santa Barbara Street.
Christopher Guerrero's the designer of the project.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. So, preliminary. Oh, I remember this one. Okay. Susan, April 2nd, is that the last? Yeah, that looks like the only motion here. So the comments the last time around.
Yeah, April 2nd.
Okay. Well, there was a straw vote. How many commissioners could support the design as proposed? That was 5-2. Commissioner Murray disagreed only with the proposed doors. The motion was. Yeah, Murray and Naylor. The proposed design is supportable. The Commission would like to see the design of the gates similarly inspired by the house. The requested modification for open yard space is supportable because sufficient open yard space would remain on the site, if not in the prescribed location. The requested modification for the encroachment into the interior setback is supportable in that it is consistent with the existing pattern of development in the neighborhood. It provides necessary improvement to the lot. It is consistent with the style of the architecture, and it is an enhancement to the property. The Commission's landscape architect would like to see the palm tree placed at a different location on the site. The preparer of the drawings was commended for the level of detail and aesthetic quality. The owner was commended for being sensitive to a wonderful home and for saving 2 oak trees on the site. So if you could walk us through it and show us how you've responded to those comments.
Okay, since that meeting, we've gone and got our modifications.
Correct.
So the modifications have been granted.
Mm-hmm.
And the 2 items that we are addressing today are the design of the gate, and I'll show in a minute some of the inspiration of the house. The other item was the location of the existing palm that's back here in where the garage is. I chose this spot here. It's right across from another existing palm, and we thought we'd put it out in front.
That's the same species.
No, actually, this is sort of a wine palm, and this is another species, but they're pretty hard to find, these wine palms.
Not only that, but this one will be bigger than this one, so maybe having 2 different species and the asymmetry would be better than 2 of the same, but with the asymmetry of different size.
Okay.
And there's already quite a bit of planting going on the property, so it was in the locations.
Okay.
And then as far as the gate goes, it basically consists of 2 sandstone piers and a wooden gate with wrought iron panels inserted across the top. The property has quite a few examples of sandstone. I chose this one here that has a course of a single full stone in 2 halves. So I'm kind of using that for inspiration. The piers are 8 feet high. I talked to the fire department, and because I wanted it to look kind of historical, I chose not to make it 12 feet apart, and the fire department said, fine, they're not going to come through the property, so it needs to be 10 foot clear. So I'm at 10 foot 4, or 10 foot 10 altogether, but once the gates are open, I'll have 10 foot clear. Have some traditional kind of iron hinges. These 3 motifs kind of pick up the dormer. The dormer has 3 windows that are slightly out of square, so I made these slightly out of square. And in wooden panels. The motif is also used on other windows and doors on the house. This is that same motif. So I didn't really find precedent in the house for really any wrought iron, but I didn't want all solid wood gates. I thought wood up to this height, the total gates is 7 feet. So they're not as high as the piers. And then the solid wood part stops at this point, so blue sky will be seen between these, and these are about 14 inches across and 16 inches down, so it's a fairly large. It's maybe not quite as big as that window, but they're not really that, they're pretty good size.
Have you detailed this yet? Or?
Not full size yet, no.
Okay.
They'll swing in. Yeah, they're, last time on the site plan we were shown here, yeah. And then at that point I hadn't really addressed what the elevation looked like at all.
Okay.
So I looked at the house for inspiration, and this molding is similar to some of the molding here around the casings of the doors and things.
And Christopher deliberately kept the scale of the gate a little bit on the conservative side because that would be more consistent with an older style. It's not like the big gates of Montecito where you might have something that's 30 feet across. This is only 8 feet tall, and this is 7 feet tall. So with me being 6 feet, as I walked down the sidewalk, I would be able to see light through those windows.
Right now, I'm thinking of mahogany. Maybe just let to kind of bleach and look kind of, not as formal as the store looks, but a little bit more on the rustic side. Probably relatively smooth wood, but let it kind of bleach instead of.
Are these like wood pegs, or are they
I thought
metal bolts?
Metal
Okay.
bolts. I've got to consult with somebody to build it, but I was thinking of using solid wood rather than any kind of metal frame, just to keep it as authentically old as possible.
Anything else changed from your previous presentation?
No, that's it right now.
And were there any conditions from the staff hearing officer?
No,
right.
The turn back that you have.
The hammerhead was supposed to be shorter so that a car couldn't be parked in there. Notice they cut off about this much of it to discourage parking inside the hammerhead, which is fine.
Okay, but your current plans don't reflect that?
I didn't make any changes to the hammerhead. I hadn't actually seen the report from that yet, but
okay.
I remember that in the meeting.
So we can make it
I did say something. Yeah.
Right.
Condition. No, it was waiting on the staff hearing officer for a preliminary. So I'll open this for public comment if there's any public that want to speak on this issue. I haven't seen any speaker slips, so it looks not. So I'll close public comment. Questions from the commission?
No questions.
So the mahogany we're going to use, will that be supported by, are the weights going to work out on that?
Yeah, I think, dimensions of lumber and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about 2.5 inches thick.
Pretty weighty door.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking of having this panel on both sides, so I'll probably need, I'm going to have a bit of depth there, I'm going to need to be at least 2.5 inches thick, I think.
And you said bleach, but do you start with the stain?
I haven't talked to the owner about it yet, but I was just thinking let it, bleach from the sun, not actually adding bleach now, but letting it lighten up.
Or darken if it oxidizes. Stain and oil on a regular basis, probably. That's my guess.
For maintenance, yeah.
Okay, any comments?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Acting Chair.
Commissioner Boucher.
I think this is lovely, and I was very impressed with the garage in the past, and since you've been to the modification hearing officer, I'm ready to make a motion for final approval of the entire project.
Do you have all the detailing for the garage?
Yeah, we do have.
You haven't detailed the gate yet, so.
Actually, what we have
Or to
is,
send it to consent if that's
We
necessary.
can certainly do that.
Because this is a beautiful job, and I'd like to commend
Definitely.
the owner and the architect. I think if we saw more things that were this well done, we'd jump up and down every week.
That's the plastic
Okay.
Exceeds mostly what we see. I would make a second to the motion for final approval.
Okay. Under discussion, I would just like to add the comment that this wrought ironwork here, presumably you wouldn't try and match what was in the windows exactly, and so I'm just thinking it ought to reflect the traditional manufacturing methods of wrought iron
Good point.
instead of just welding those things together into a seamless thing. And perhaps this is an opportunity for strapping or something. You know.
Yeah, excellent.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor and a second for a. This is a final with.
Yeah. Oh, I also want to make.
Well, let me finish making the motion. Would that be to return to consent for details of the gate? Okay. And with the condition that
Mr. Chair, excuse me. Somebody was nodding their head, but I didn't get what was the answer? Return to consent?
Return to consent,
for
yeah.
details. Okay.
And with the condition that the plans be revised to reflect the conditions of the staff hearing officer regarding the turnaround or the hammerhead.
And then I just want to make a comment. The moving of the existing palm trees is great. Actually, that's going to be quite nice. They're both skyline palms. That'll be very handsome.
Be
so,
nice.
you know, that symmetrical arrangement is very appropriate.
Great, thanks.
All those in favor of the motion? Aye. Any opposed?
Mr. Chair? Make historic resource findings that the project won't cause a substantial adverse change in the significance of an historical resource.
Yeah, you bet. And when would you like to return on consent? 2 weeks or indefinite?
I'll leave that up to you because it's your schedule.
Yeah. Can we sign up for 2 weeks and
Sure.
And I can
Yeah.
adjust that if I need to.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Any chance of seeing you on Friday? Yeah. Of course, I sent you an email. Okay. Friday noon. Okay. Great. Our next garden is 801 State Street. Did you step down? Alex, if you would, please.
Oh, my God.
My name is Nadeem Shu. I am the architect for Kim and Tammy Hughes, and this is the Rocks, or former Rocks building, the Las Tiendas building as it's affectionately known. Little tents. Tents? Like
Okay, so the minutes for the last meeting, we did have a preliminary approval with comments to simplify the third floor on the State Street. I mean, closest to the State Street, and to bring photographs of the historic awnings and arches, I guess, in the on the State Street elevation.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, back here with this project, and wanted to start by just saying that we took your comments to heart last time regarding just simplifying the roof line, simplifying the State Street elevation as well as the Paseo elevation. Essentially, we're just carrying the roof, the main roof line, all the way through. It does extend up to a parapet at this location.
And then you step that wall down.
And you step the wall down.
And you change this corner.
And I changed that, so we sort of got rid of the whoop-de-doo that used to be there.
And are those crosses, do they mean like they have like an iron bar, or they mean that they're open?
They're open, and they're, I'm anticipating about a 1 1/4 inch thick by 16 inch thick tile paver, similar to this, but this would be more for the rail caps.
Okay. Okay, does everybody understand the proposal? Yeah. And you have a view from this side now?
Yes, I do.
There it is.
For the views here, again, the idea was to, again, greatly simplify the both the tower and the elevation from State Street. This is the State Street elevation here. This is more of a section.
I see. So here you continue the roof, and the roof dies on a little parapet there on that side.
That's
at the end, the tower.
Into the tower, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And we've simplified the tower back to just being a four-sided hip. There's no that little narrow section of ridge, which again we agreed with your comments. I did bring the photograph as you requested of the original building, and it did show awnings along the both facades. And I also, just because it doesn't show very well in two dimensions, I think we show it better this time, but I believe this was the awning you were referring to.
Yeah.
And it's obviously too whimsical for this building, and don't intend to do any of that level of, I'll refrain from the proper adjective, but we'll just call it whimsy. We're going to refrain from that and go with something a lot more conservative and stately for this building, the simplicity of this building. But the concept of the awning, I think, is what you had directed us, and we really do.
So you have you eliminate a row of posts. Now you have only one on the outside, and I count 1, 2, 3.
There used to be 5.
And it used to be 2 rows.
And 2 rows. Okay. So we've greatly simplified it.
10 to 3. That's quite a simplification.
Yeah, that's true.
And how does it run?
They'll probably stack back this way.
I see. So they go on the other way. Okay, I got it.
Actually, they really could go either direction, and they're just designed to run along a series of horizontal cables. Again, the idea is to provide some sun and also inclement weather protection, and so the idea would that the troughs that the awning is slightly angled, and that it would drop off onto the lower roof and cover the open stair to below in periods of inclement weather.
So are they retractable? I mean, they go in and out?
Yes, they're side to side.
Side to side.
Yeah.
While we're on this, what's going on here? Is that a pot?
That's
in a pot.
A pot plant or a potted plant? That wouldn't be illegal. We have a license or something, or a prescription. It is a potted plant with one of the suggested plantings. We listed it on
a tile shelf.
Yes, anchored to a tile shelf.
Any other questions? Questions, Mr. House? No? Okay. Anybody else?
Yes? I do have a question. I thought of the color of that at this point.
Probably something more uniform in color.
A single color.
A single color. None of the the fancy accoutrements on the valance, but a much more simple. I think it needs some form of end detail in the form of valance, like I don't know if that's the correct word for it, but not anything this fancy and more in a uniform color. That I would try to pick up the some variation, probably darker in hue, but in the same color family as the terracotta.
So that's the flag of Spain.
It is. And I think it would be a bit much for this building. But we like the detail of the awning. The tents.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, comments?
Oh, I did have a question. I'm sorry, what was that big thick bar?
This was the sample of the awning posts. And
Can we take a look without hurting anybody?
This is. Yes, and I'm envisioning, this is the only sample I have in my back pocket. But it's a pocket with a bunch of holes in it. In any case, I'm envisioning a slightly larger proportion. But
Really?
yeah, I looked at the existing one that's on the building right now. I have a picture of the, better not drop this.
Yeah.
Cause some damage. Kill the applicant. This is an example of what's actually there right now, and that's 2 inches nominally in dimension. This actually is only a little bit more than an inch, so I'm thinking somewhere more in the 1.5 to 2 inch range, because from a distance these are really going to be, they're going to look like toothpicks if they're this scale.
Right.
So we're going to try to get something more in this. Yeah, and the way it's drawn is actually at 2 inches. So, and then some larger decorative bronze balls wrought iron balls on top.
Very good. So do we have? Oh, you have some details too that you would like us to take a look.
I've got a lot of in-progress details. Yes.
Okay, so we have a few minutes to take a look at these details. Let's see.
Yeah, I think I've looked them through and just have a couple questions.
Okay.
On sheet A 5.1, detail 20, the left column there, where does that occur? Can you show me? It says that there is a half-round copper gutter when located below roof, and I'm just wondering where that occurs. Can you show me on the elevation where that might occur?
Yes. Again, our roof plan has changed, so that detail may not occur as more simplified it. I don't believe it. Let me just take a look back at the detail again. No, that detail does not occur with a with a gutter. It would only be an overflow where required. Yes, from these. Now these would all, the overflows for these would all be inside the wall itself.
Right, I saw that detail.
So that's the typical detail, and I think there's only one drain that would have a pure parapet. Actually, this drain could use that same detail also within the wall. So I don't.
Well, I would just request that if you do have any scuppers that come through a visible wall, if you just show them on the elevations for next time around. Okay. And on page A 5.2, detail 33, where does that occur? I mean, I could probably find it pretty easily, but that is...
Which detail again, Steve?
33.
That is along...
Is it here?
You had a detail on top of parapets last time, but I think you eliminated that, haven't you? You just simplified.
Yeah, I think that one would be more the mansard. It's a parapet in the form of a mansard that wants to appear like a ridge along the shed roofs.
So that would be here?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, but...
The tile would be turned in the other direction.
Okay, so yeah. All right, so you would be the other direction.
Yeah. This one here, you'd see it in the other direction.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that's...
Okay, so you'll be redrawing that one.
And you have the tile, right?
Where that occurs, yeah, there would be exactly the tile coming up to it, and that would be this detail here.
Mm-hmm. And with the tile, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So I'd be referencing that detail.
I think those
Half inch back. Is this too small, the size? Or?
Well, the window scale is quite small, and I wanted that bar stock to be a little more diminutive to the main iron.
So that happens where? Are those for the elevator holes? Or? No.
No, those are the clay tile. Let me see, where would these occur? That would be on the door.
Those
it
things.
would be on this window and these two. This is actually an opening. These two small windows here that come out of the elevator shaft door, the foyer, and then this is actually an opening that is to behind.
What is that? Oh, that's the same detail?
That is the same detail of the tile vent. No, it's the inch and a quarter tile ordered together.
And that tile goes on top of this wall, stepping wall?
Just on the caps.
On the caps, yeah.
And on the guardrails.
And there was a question about these arches. Can you make them, or was this a feasibility question, or not?
What we had proposed is when there is the appropriate time to actually restore these, we will be. Right now there is a tenant in that space that is a fairly long-term tenant, although after this remodel they might not be. Not sure. They'll survive the construction dust. We are restoring this door here. This is the door to the future basement, or the proposed basement, I should say, and that is we're restoring that back to what it was, and it's on the historic structures report in the photos. That would be this one here.
And so these two will go later on. Okay, all right.
If possible, we'll do it this round. It's definitely going to be, it's designed as such. I just don't know the disposition of the tenant in the space.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
What's the status of determining the structural feasibility of opening?
It is definitely not a feasible. We have investigated it.
So what happened since the building was originally built? Did they put a floor in there, or what?
Well, we believe it was done as part of the seismic upgrade that was done to the building. There's a bunch of, right in that corner in the bar area, there's a bunch of exposed steel, and it just ties right through those arches, so I think they were plastered over.
So what are you proposing to do here exactly?
We would actually propose an awning here that would be in the shape of the original arch.
So what's the other?
Inside the arch.
Yeah, will be one on this side too?
Yes.
So we'll go what?
We're going to set it inside the arch.
I have it shown on the outside.
And it would be what, like this?
There would actually be one showing on that. Yeah.
Like this and like that, if I was talking about it?
Like eighth circle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think we don't normally
They should be set inside the arch.
approve those, but it is the historic awning that was on the other windows.
Well, it should be flat fronted.
It's flat front, is it?
But set into the arch.
It's flat front, it's not like that. It is like I had it.
Balloon awnings we don't.
It's not like that, it's like this.
Oh,
It's like
So how
that.
does it do that?
It does. It works.
Well, the Biltmore has those in the
The Italian Greek deli used to have one of those, right? Yeah.
Well, that was funny. That was certain.
That was segmented, yeah.
Isn't that,
It would come to a straight balance. Yes.
is that what was done at the Canary?
Those are a little bit different, but same idea.
Okay.
Okay, it seems like we have a lot of drawings. You're almost getting closer to a final, but what else is missing here? Do we have a structural lighting and all that? I mean, I'm trying to move this along. What do you think we
Well, I
need?
think there's a lot of details for as complex a project as this is that we have yet to see, and you haven't finished your structural, right?
We actually are in the process of almost a complete structural redesign as a result of...
I mean, not that we need to look through structural drawings, but often you've got to make revisions to...
Well, we actually did. We had
a full set of structural drawings that that showed us a lot of conflicts with the architectural elements, and that actually triggered all of the refinements that we've done. So now our drawings are, and we adjusted them with the structural team as well. So the consultant drawings are in progress, but we wanted the architecture to be able to be feasible with regard to the structural drawings. It was a little bit of a juggling act, which came first, the chicken or the egg. They were sort of, one was driving the other.
Okay, so you basically the electrical, the light fixtures and...
The light fixtures need to be...
hardware, that kind of things.
How about rooftop equipment? There's got to be some of that for a restaurant.
There is, and it's this. It's behind. It's in the roof well. Set behind the.
I mean, do you have that shown in sections, the maximum size of equipment? And well, you'll be getting mechanical drawings. So
yeah, we'll be getting mechanical drawings, and we're going to try to set it back as far away from the. But we have about a 3-foot high. And there's currently restaurant equipment up there right now. That's
so these are skylights or what? No, that's the equipment right
this
there.
This is the conceptual locations of the equipment, although it has not been finally specified yet.
Okay. So then what we can do, this is an in-progress review. I don't have any comments. Okay. Okay.
I have one or two comments.
Okay, please.
It's not really critical, but I would say that awning fabric and that color is a chance to use vibrancy, and I don't know what you're going to pick, but the reason some of those fabrics work, the colors, is they definitely provide vibrancy. I wouldn't suggest what color to use, but it's going to be a very important look while that is certainly open. So choose a color well, and I definitely look forward to seeing that. And I like the integration of the pot with the plant on the tile. Maybe it's been there.
No, it's new.
I like that integration. I think a plant with a sculptural quality, an agave, something like that, could be really a wonderful small detail.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. House.
Let's see. Let's go to elevation drawings. Where were you speaking of, Robert? Over here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I would comment that I think you've come up with a successful solution here. This is an area that still, I think, needs a little bit of massage. I see this is larger than that column on this elevation, but if you look at this view, it's the same size as that. And this feels kind of stout and heavy to me, so this seems like the better proportion. And for the engaged column, I don't think it should be a full column sticking out there, but maybe 3/4 of a column, something like that. Well, that's a section, so you could be seeing the middle one, but this would be a view of the end one. So
that's a good point. Do you have a structural need for that?
Yes, we do.
Like a panel that you have?
There's a very large steel column running through here, as well as. Let me see.
So can you shorten this a foot? Or?
Yes, it's here. Now this one's right at the edge.
Well, what about this edge?
I could.
Yes, I think it's got a point that this should be. Should be
I mean, maybe this could be somewhat bigger. Maybe it's just you need to massage this whole area and get it to look all right. I mean, it's just like 3 different elements that needs the resolution. As far as this part here, it would seem to me a little more successful if this extension here appeared to be dying into something, and it seems like it just kind of overshoots the edge there. So maybe if that chimney shifts over a little bit, we don't have a. Do we have a detail of that yet?
I think it was
this section of that.
Sure. I do not have a
Okay,
detail
so
yet.
we'll
no.
review that next time. So, while I think that you've resolved that well, this just feels contrived to me. It just feels like you had that little shed roof, and how do I resolve that? And this is stepped back from that, but it just feels contrived. And then here it looks like it continues up, but from the elevation the other side, it clearly doesn't. So you might address that. But I just wonder whether or not you have another solution that doesn't involve coming up with all these elements to try and resolve it, and if there could be something a lot simpler, including possibly the awning just retracting all the way back to that wall. I know it doesn't actually collide with that tile roof. It stops somewhat short, but maybe you don't need that little tile roof, and you can just take your awning structure all the way over.
Actually, I really like that.
Well, it's just
worked really
one
hard on it.
person's comment. Well, let me finish my comments. And then that's a new introduction, I think, and could you explain that?
Yeah, these are simply a very simple...
recess, or are they actually openings?
They are recessed, and there is a window behind it in the...
It's a grill.
Yes, it's plaster grill. It's similar to this.
I don't know. I just feel like it's getting a little busy with a bunch of disparate elements on there, so that's my personal sentiment about it. Seems to me there's one other thing. But it's certainly making great strides. Appreciate all the work you've done on it. I think it's getting closer.
All right, let's hear some other comments, and then we'll see how much agreement we have on these comments. Okay?
I just a comment on Commissioner House's comment about the resolution of that. This may be better, instead of like a stuck-on pot, to really integrate a little planter in the wall and make it solidify that a little bit, rather than seeming like a little pot stuck on a shelf. Just a thought. I'm not trying to design it, but
I mean, like this, like the pots.
just integrate it better, so it looks like it belongs rather than a Band-Aid or something.
I think it should be asked improvement.
But I'm just
just
a thought.
How does the
Mr. Chairman,
yes, please.
I'm sorry I missed the last review in which preliminary approval was given. I think there has been great improvement, but I would tend to agree with Commissioner House that there are some areas that need to be re-looked at, and I can see your structural problems. But I am also disturbed by this. I think it's always been a slight problem because of the rectangularity of this building and what you're trying to put up there. And so what I'm looking for still for you to do is to make this feel as if it's a part of this. And I'm not getting that feeling yet in terms of the proportion or that it is a continuation of the building below, either on this elevation or on this elevation. And then I think there it's the proportion of your windows for me at any rate. So that's what I'd be looking for, is more of a integration of below and above. And I think you're well on your way there compared to what I had seen a meeting or so ago.
Okay. All right. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to add, I'm sure you're probably working on this, but just more drawings of the awning structure. There's a lot of other stuff going on in the drawings to really get a sense of what that feels like, and I'd ideally appreciate a little SketchUp model or something like that, just so one could kind of get an idea of what it looks like when you're down in the Paseo looking up and it's silhouetted against the sky. What does that look like? So I think that's a very important design feature, and it's important to make sure you evaluate it with all the tools necessary before it gets built.
Okay. I'd like some comments. How does the rest of the board feel about this tower. That's it. The comment made is that there is a disparity of openings, that there's a new element introduced that perhaps is unnecessary. It doesn't seem to appear elsewhere. Yeah, that's a chimney top or a vent top. This is perhaps there's a conflict between this one and that one. Perhaps you wouldn't have both of them together.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. So, for the minutes, disparity of openings, and can you just say...
Well, yeah, we're going to make a comment. We're going to summarize this and trying to get a consensus as to the disparity of the openings, the two different styles of venting between the series of small openings right here on the tower, and the openings with the saltillo with a thick tile.
If it's a window, maybe it should read as a window. I mean, it's not, you said there was glass behind it, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, there was a window there last time, and
last time there were other issues, but I don't know. It's just
personally, I would actually like to try to bring this up in a way that sort of continues this theme, so that ties the two together. When I did that last time, it was criticized for. don't quite. I don't know. But I could see it being maybe perhaps one small window, so there's a reduction as you go up, and as you sort of see in these photos around the room.
Vents required or necessary? I mean, maybe there's just too many things going on there, and if you got rid of those and had an appropriate window up there, simplify has always been kind of the guiding comment.
Okay, so that would be the comment that we look for. The next time to simplify the termination, the third floor of the elevator tower. We're going to call this elevator tower.
Mr. Chair, may I quibble with that? I'm not necessarily looking for simplification. I'm looking for integration with the existing building. If you tell him to simplify and he doesn't, I'm looking for integration.
Yeah,
that's important too. Integration, actually. That's absolutely right.
Yeah, and there's a number of ways you might achieve that, including getting rid of the vent. So.
Okay. Now let's see by show of hands how many commissioners accept this wing wall to terminate the roof on the tower.
I like it, but it could be improved.
Okay, so do we have those in favor? Raise your hand.
What was the straw vote again?
On this wall to terminate the...
Which wall?
This one I'm pointing at right here.
You can't say that in writing.
Aha.
It has to be in the minutes.
On the paseo elevation, the wing wall on the paseo elevation.
Left side, third floor.
On the third floor elevator
adjacent to the elevator tower.
Okay, so how many people find this solution acceptable?
I think it could be improved, but almost acceptable.
So you raise your hand?
Well, Mr. Chair.
No, it's not acceptable yet. I'd like to see.
Nobody found it acceptable?
Okay, I find it acceptable. Is anybody else? Am I the only one? This is two people.
Mr.
Right?
Chair, I have to say it all ties in with how he does. I want to give him the freedom to do what he wants to do.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Can I just throw a wrench in the works? I'm not sure why is there an opposition necessarily to having that tower come out to the face of the building so it truly is a tower right through the full 3 floors of the building instead of having it step back like it does? In other words, if it came out like this, so that this would be truly a tower element on the building, and it would give you a terminus as you look down the side of the building, you'd have a terminus, because this is already tall anyway.
I mean, it's worth exploring. I just wonder whether proportions would work.
Well, it would cause a gigantic mass increase by 10 feet to the tower.
It would go from here.
I mean, it would be. I mean, it would. It would be.
It would be sizable.
think it would be something like
The tower could actually just be an element that's...
Yeah, but then you have to...
the elevator.
Has to get elevators here.
Yeah, well, it could be behind it as another element that's not seen because the tower is...
Well,
It's just the elevator itself in plan is what drives the...
The elevator is back here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It will be an additional mass. It will... I think we need to backtrack. We found this mass unacceptable, this design acceptable for the preliminary last time.
Yeah.
I think that's really going back. What is valid is the comment to integrate the top by some kind of redesign, I guess.
I want to make the point that I think inclusion of a living plant up there is not a bad idea. A hint of a roof garden without being a roof garden, but really kind of a special thing to look at. Is a nice idea, but I don't know that it's fully solved yet.
Okay, all right. So the comment is it continues to integrate the top of the tower with the rest of the building. There's another comment on the details of the arcade closest to, on the third floor, closest to State Street, that the columns be more uniform. Provide more detailing and on the awning, and the comment is that the vibrant awning colors would be an important element in this design.
Well, let's even summarize it further. The awning is going to be very important. So, as Commissioner Howes mentioned, we need to really understand it and see how that design is moving along. We really need to understand that awning. It almost deserves a separate drawing and samples or whatever. That detail we really need to understand. It needs clarification.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add that the reason that isn't more fully developed in this round is, we're searching for an appropriate solution, and I didn't want to go fully detail something that everybody was going to jump up and down and object to.
Yeah, this is an in-progress review, and the applicant proposes to do this, which is, I think it's pretty clear what the intent is. It's just not detail, and he will detail it next time, right? Yeah. Are there any other comments? Do we have those two conditions? Yes.
I was just picking up on something that still needs a little resolution. Let's look first at this next elevation, in which we see that the eave of this little shed roof is below this primary roof here.
The plan shows that.
And it's just right below it. Yet on here, if you started with top of roof about there and you had the same pitch, it kind of looks like maybe that thing's still not doing the job of covering that. So,
I did study that in plan, Steve, and did section and elevation on the other side, and I believe it does.
Yeah. And then on the roof plan is showing this is above that.
Yeah, you're correct.
So, and I think the suggestion might have been made last time with this shed roof. If you're not eliminating it, then why not just express it on the end view as, perhaps a post and beam there, or maybe another one of these columns there or something, and just let that be open and not have that solid wall there.
I did hear that comment last time, and I took it hard, and I thought about it and sketched it, and this was my preferred solution. But I appreciate the comment.
Okay, so we have a comment on the termination of the wall right here, and especially on this column right here, right? Okay.
Well, that whole composition of columns.
Okay, so we just don't need we need a motion to continue this, right? So, you want to go for 2 weeks, or you want to wait some more, and to have the rest of the.
Well, I would actually ask some direction from the commission on this, because obviously we have wanted to get the architecture right on before we proceed with a lot of engineering, because it really, one dictates the other, and they're very integrated. So
I think a 2-week continuance then to resolve those 2 areas, I think it would be appropriate then.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah, good. All right. So a motion by Adams, a second by House. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So this 2-week continuance for what? Progress?
Mr. Chair, just under discussion, if we solve our detailing sufficiently, could we ask for final at that review with any unresolved details, if they're minor enough, to come back on consent? Because
we need we need the lighting, the mechanical, right?
Well, that was that was my question, is because this would require a lot of further engineering and to get all of those things worked out. If it wouldn't be more prudent to come back with our working drawings at that point, or final.
I see one, but
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Final approval is required to be submitted a week ahead, so that means you would only have 1 week to do all this.
Okay.
And it seems like
submit by next Wednesday if you're going to be asking for final approval in 2 weeks.
My sense is we need to resolve these areas that we felt needed architectural facade, and you've still got mechanical and electrical and all that sort of stuff. So
it would be more prudent to do it.
Come back in 2 weeks with the progress of those architectural areas. Make sure you've got those nailed down. And then
only those areas. You don't have to bring the rest of the drawings, really. Just to concentrate on those areas. Yeah.
Okay, and we'll get the consultant's fund on it, so we can start looking at mechanical.
Okay. All right. Very good.
Thank you.
Did you
don't have to bring that, or did you?
They did, though?
Can I not bring this again?
That's what I would say.
I'm on material board for final. Do we need to massage this?
No.
Or this? No?
No. Okay. All right, so we move on to the next subject, which is 914 Santa Barbara Street. And this goes back to staff. Yeah. Great. And we get one of these. Just one will do. Yeah. Okay, and that one, those pictures. Okay, great. Good afternoon. If you can give your name for the record, please.
Jerry Jackman, Executive Director, Santa Barbara Trust for Historic Preservation.
Steve Andre for the Santa Barbara Contractors Association. I'm the designer.
Bill, would you like to chair this? Okay. Doesn't mean anything. Okay, let's see. So basically, last time I can see there's something missing here.
So last time we sort of split the thing that's missing off, and we were just going to come back and look at the ADA ramp. We wanted to see that in wood, and then the stairs and the porch on the other side.
Yeah, I remember the comments. Yeah, that's what we talked. Yeah, okay. So, okay, we have, okay. Do we have details? Okay.
Well, I just redid the elevations. I've got some details on the ADA.
I need my coaster back.
My armrest.
So, okay, so we have a wood ramp detailing and the new detail of the porch, which is what is this thing here? This is existing, right?
Yeah, this is existing.
Existing one. Okay.
a back door that's existing. This is the front existing door with its awning.
And this will be a concrete?
No, wood
All of it?
wood ramp.
The wood ramp.
Wood ramp with a wood rail.
Yeah, that's the...
So I've got a detail on A5 that shows a little better the wood.
All right. There it is. What's this little extension?
That's the
Required.
grab rail. It's required by the ADA. Yeah.
But it's not the only way of doing it, right?
Is there another way of doing it?
It had to extend 12 inches.
Structure to that, you just need a safety. It doesn't have to fly off by its own turn.
Oh, okay. Well, that's easy to
You
do.
can extend the whole thing so it dies into it.
Okay.
It just has to extend so many inches from the...
Okay. From the end of the ramp.
Yeah.
Okay.
For that matter, I mean, that top rail could just be flush cut with the end post, or take the end post up higher. It just has to be continuous, and it's not in a configuration that you could impale yourself.
Because we are actually that far past the end of the ramp already.
From here on?
Yeah.
So that's...
So we could just take that
I
off.
believe that's it, yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah. You save a couple of bucks. Okay, and so okay. Anything else you would like to add, or everything's self-explanatory? The bracket is here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. These are the plans. Yeah. I had a question. I think I asked the question last time. But this post seems like so alone. I usually get like, it seems like the...
I almost put that in for you. But I thought adding the pickets sort of got that massing, and they're really not that far apart. They're about 8 feet apart.
Okay. All right. Okay, we have public testimony. Mr. DeForest.
Thank you. Well, we haven't got... I don't know whether they've asked all the questions.
Okay, well...
Tell them DeForest. I'm just wondering, and maybe Mr. Jacobus, as he stepped away, or somebody, how when this rather simple building was designed by Windsor Sewell for the campus years and years ago, how would they have done and we didn't have to have handicap ramps back then, how would they have done the railing for a ramp? This seems rather complicated with all the up and down supports. Does it require all the supports?
You mean the pickets again?
Yeah, all the pickets.
No.
Does it require all of them?
No.
And does that fit with the... Doesn't quite seem like what they would have done in the 1920s or 30s when this building was originally made. Thank you.
Interesting comment.
So the answer is no, we don't really need the pickets.
But you do need the rail. You need the guide rail.
We do need the guardrail, so we could easily take the pickets out.
Well, I think the last presentation did not have the pickets, and we directed
We
them
didn't like it.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I can answer that question.
Please.
Mr. DeForest, actually, the spacing on pickets until recently was 6 inches, with a 6-inch gap between the vertical pickets. And what is shown is what was done in the period for sloped handrails going up to porches. It's not unusual. So, but what the applicant has done is consistent with the style and period.
Just to raise a question, since you're not more than 30 inches, then the 4-inch spacing doesn't apply. So, I mean, are these 4-inch spacing?
4-inch spacing.
So maybe that's not necessary to be that tight, and a little further apart would be more appropriate.
Like 6 inches.
6 inches.
Okay. Traditional. Okay.
Yeah, that's different.
Isn't that the relationship to the head of the child or something like the 4-inch ball? Yeah.
So they could stick their head through and get stuck. That's sort of
Children
what,
stick their heads in
and
rails.
that's why I put the 4-inch space on.
But if they were like 12 inches, then
they could just fall right through it.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Okay, comments, please. Mr. House.
Well, I would just say that I find everything you're proposing acceptable at this point, but I would like to see it returned with complete details, because there are things that don't really reflect construction reality, such as the... Go. This part dropped off. Okay, so anyway, the accessibility ramp section on A5 just has a poche underneath the wood planks, and so I would like to see, not for structural reasons how that happens, but it's more a matter of, if we look at the elevation view of it, the west elevation view on sheet A2, it's probably not going to have a 2x12 there, and you need to think about what is the edge detail of that and a cross section through that. And for instance, also on the east elevation, the deck boards continue all the way across, and unless they hang way out, they're most likely not going to project beyond the posts. And so, you ought to give some thought to that detailing so that it's appropriately resolved.
Okay.
So complete details, including handrail and post termination, that kind of a thing?
Yeah.
Okay, got that. Anything else? Any other comments?
Yes.
Mr. Adams.
I would like to see just, what the kinds of plantings that are going to be integrated, especially in front of, I want to see the plantings integrated, especially in front of this ramp structure. Just some idea. It doesn't have to be extensive, but some idea. That would really help.
Okay, can you
soften
show us here?
The bottom.
Are you talking about this area here?
I'll show you on the elevations. What is the possibility of landscaping in front of the west elevation?
Mm-hmm.
What might be chosen to soften that?
There's a sidewalk there. There won't be anything.
Yeah,
there won't be anything on that side.
And then lawn on the other side.
The lawn on the other side.
Yeah, you got a walkway there. Yeah, that's that.
So I guess I would like to see where lawn occurs. That
it's not
that's
change.
lawn.
Yeah. No, that's not going to change. Yeah.
So this is open to landscaping.
This portion right here.
Okay. So this section, I would then say, let's see, where's the direction? Where's north?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So west of
I would say on the west
side of
elevation.
West side of ramp.
Yeah. Just some thought about that.
Got it. Okay. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. House.
A couple other things occur to me. On the east elevation, we've got a downspout apparently at the right end. But if you look at the side view of that kind of overhang, it's pretty far out there, and some thought ought to be given to how you get the downspout from the gutter back to the building wall.
I was going horizontally behind the beam.
Okay, well, draw a detail of that so that, because otherwise, if that's conflicting with those lovely knee braces that you have.
I tried every way, and that's the only way that looks decent.
Okay, and then the other comment would be on the west elevation where you have that large window. I believe that ramp will require a rail on both sides, so you should show how you're going to attach that to the building so that it's not despoiling.
There's going to be a rail here too.
Yeah, and details of how you attach that pipe rail to the top of the wood guardrail.
Okay. I've got a checklist here. Mr. Lavoie.
It seems that the drawings are fairly accurately drawn, except for the details that Mr. House is asking for. That we should, I think we should give it preliminary approval and return it to the consent calendar.
I agree.
Is that the motion?
That's motion.
Second.
Okay, so it's a motion by Lavoie, a second by Boucher for a preliminary approval with complete details to return to the consent calendar.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, so I'm confused then, because porch and accessible ramp components of the project will be reviewed, so is the solar coming out of the project description?
It's not there.
It's not there.
Yeah.
It's coming out for now.
Okay, I just want to
Okay.
make sure that that's,
Yeah.
okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
What we decided in the last meeting was that we would split them apart so that we could just address the solar on its own at a different
Thank you.
Okay.
Terrific.
Okay. And the details would be the handrail details, the post termination, the handrail to wall detail, and the downspout.
Planting detail.
Yeah. Downspout, and planting on the west side of the ramp.
Planning on the west side of,
The ramp.
oh.
Funding for Crossroads Cafe was provided in part by the Departments of Education of the states of California, Florida, Illinois, and New York, and by the United States Department of Education and the United States Immigration and Naturalization